Hello and welcome to Boss Door, the final threshold beyond which games must face their final and toughest opponent, the critical gaming public. I'm Ross, and I'm here with my co-host,
Joey.
I'm playing the game to see how little I can have Joey speak in the intro. And today we're going to be talking about Hollow Knight.
Joey. Cut that. We're not keeping that.
Every time we say cut that, I keep it.
Don't keep that one. I've noticed that. God, you're gonna keep all of this.
It's funnier when I do the thing you don't want to do.
Nah, see, I'm making soda noises, so. Oh, okay. Ugh. Jesus.
Now I don't know if I can keep it.
Yeah, I know, that was the plan.
We'll find out.
I can just play any second of it and it be enjoyable. I'm really fascinated with the environmental storytelling that puts the onus on the audience to kind of piece it all together.
A really fast-paced platformer, something closer to like Celeste than Metroid.
Like, it just reminds me of things that I enjoy. And in the future, other things I enjoy are going to remind me of Hollow Knight.
Watcher Knights feel like bullshit. So, as I said in the last cast, Hollow Knight has been one of my favorite games of all time. Definitely in my top 10. And I've played it many, many times to the point where, like, doing this cast, I didn't even need to replay it. I actually started speedrunning the game instead, which was a lot of fun. So, I actually kind of want to throw to you, Joey, first to find out, like, what was your first experience with Hollow Knight? This is the first time you played it, right?
Yeah, that's something we've been kind of doing a lot, like, as a cast, where we kind of pick a game where one person, like, has played it and has an affinity to it. And I think it works because a lot of times when you play a game and you're not actually putting your, like, review hat on, you know, you just have fun and you have your own kind of impressions in your brain and you're not, like, looking for things that are good or bad. So it's been kind of enjoyable so far trying to pick games where it's like one of our favorite games and it's on the other person to love it or we're no longer doing the podcast anymore.
Exactly.
But Hollow Knight, so I don't play a lot of indie games because I'm stupid. Like, I do have a problem where it's like, I'd rather play big budget stuff, not because I think it's better. I inherently think it's worse, but I like bad things more than I like good things a lot. So I tend to shy away from stuff that doesn't really say anything about, like, the industry, I guess. But I always wanted to play Hollow Knight because I play more 2D games than most people. Because when I'm not playing, you know, a bigger, more popular game, I tend to play, like, Super Metroid, which, if you listen to the last cast, really like Super Metroid. Probably going to talk about it for a while in this cast, and then have to stop talking about it for our next couple of podcasts.
Yeah, I always thought you kind of do more like a retro game sort of thing. Like, I play a lot more actual AAA game, like modern AAA games than you do.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Like, I play tons of them, even though I also think they are inherently bad. And I've personally been making the switch to indie games for a while.
But what I was going to say, not to cut you off, but I already did, is I like some of the retro games because it's interesting to see how the game industry changed.
Yeah.
You know, like, we talk a lot about how there's like a switch in games where they decided that all of the people playing are dumb. And they started being like, okay, over there, go there, go there. Here's a marker on your map. Go there, go there. And you don't have this old experience of you just enter a game and you don't know the rules, you don't know how it works, and you just kind of figure it out as you go. Indie games clearly still do that because they're homaging an older game style, right? Like we talked about with the last cast, but if you didn't listen to the last cast, Super Metroid's notorious for that. Super Metroid's main thing was, we don't put text on the screen. Figure it out. We don't put text on the screen to explain movement ability sometimes that you need to figure out by watching a sprite do it.
It's so funny to me when we played Super Metroid, and we had to learn to wall jump, and I was like, I don't have that power up, and you're like, no, you have wall jump from the beginning of the game, and I was like, what are you talking about? But we did, and also that was not the power up we needed at that time. We had to Google how to do the thing they were asking us to do, because they just don't tell you. They just don't tell you how at all you could do it.
And what I would say about Hollow Knight is it's clearly, so obviously, in my opinion, influenced by two games, Super Metroid and Dark Souls.
What about Castlevania? Yeah, I've never played Symphony of the Night either. Have you played Symphony of the Night? I don't actually.
I actually not played Symphony of the Night. I've played some of the earlier ones.
Me and you played the first one together, Castlevania.
Yeah.
And that was. It's always confused me why they're called Metroidvanias, because I was like, Castlevania has nothing to do with Metroid, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's Symphony of the Night. It's the other one.
And ironically, like later Metroids have nothing to do with Metroidvania.
They really went opposite directions with that. But honestly, when I think about Hollow Knight 2, it's weird to think of it as an indie game because it did blow up so big. It's like it's really the biggest Metroidvania in the world right now. It's inspired countless other Metroidvanias doing similar things. It's I don't like to compare a lot of games to Hollow Knight because that's not really fair. That's just like they're just Metroidvanias with like a moody atmosphere. It's not fair to compare them in the same way that so many games were compared to Dark Souls because like they were hard, you know?
Yeah.
But Hollow Knight was created by Team Cherry, which is 2 people, William Pellin and Ari Gibson. That's it. And Christopher Larkin, the composer. Between the 3 of them, they created everything that is Hollow Knight. And that's wild when you play this game. Because for me, not for everybody, but for me at least, the game is a 60-hour experience with, I think, 3 DLCs for free. And the game had a price point, still has a price point, of $15, which is unthinkable.
$15? That's so cheap. Thanks, Team Cherry, for this sponsorship.
Team Cherry did not sponsor us. I spent more than $15 on lunch today, you know? Joseph Anderson on YouTube, when he was doing his review of Hollow Knight, said, at the $15 price point, this game is perfect. It is beyond reproach. And that's a fair way of looking at it. Like, for your money, there is nothing negative you could say about this game, you know, because you could play shit for $15 and you wouldn't feel bad about it. This is a fully realized, like, way better than any AAA game out there for $15. A full, like, 60-hour experience in my experience.
Yeah, if this game came out, like, a long time ago and was, like, a retro game, like, just the exact same game, but it was a Super Nintendo game, like, I'd pay like $100+ for it. Like that's like, you know, that's how much a lot of the Super Nintendo, the classics.
I could see that.
And it has that feel. Like I think a lot of, I kind of think of like there's 3 indie games that are kind of like the pillars of indie to me. And, you know, maybe people don't think this way, but this is how I look at it, which is Shovel Knight, Undertale, and Hollow Knight.
That's fair.
And all of those are heavily influenced by different games of the Super Nintendo in previous era. Right, like Undertale is just Earthbound.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think all of those games, even though I haven't played Shovel Knight, I haven't really played Undertale, but I've
played Shovel Knight. It's a basic platformer. Well, yeah, I don't call it basic.
I'm pretty sure it's very like Mega Man influenced, but I haven't played it. So
yeah, it is Super Mega Man, but it's also like very heavy on platforming, like much more Metroid than Mega Man in that regard.
Oh well, Mega Man's super platform heavy.
Is it?
Yeah.
It always feels like I don't know. When I think of Mega Man, I think of like a lot of straight hallways. There's definitely platforming.
No, it's you don't play a lot of Mega Man.
Yeah, maybe I'm crazy. I've seen a lot of Mega Man, but
Mega Man's platforming is brutal. It's like,
oh, I know that.
It's like here's tiny platforms and they disappear from under you. Also, fireballs are coming at you. Like it's just a different.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'm crazy then.
There's eras of Mega Man. Not really here to talk about Mega Man, but that's just, you know.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Mega Man.
I'll never talk about Mega Man. I really don't care for that series at all.
I like Mega Man, but so I think a lot of these games are trying to like capture the nostalgia. But the one thing I say that Hollow Knight has that these other games don't have, at least to my knowledge, I'm not an expert on these indie games, is the influence of the modern games, specifically Dark Souls. I'm not trying to say the game is gameplay Dark Souls-esque, but there's a thing that Dark Souls brought into games that you might have noticed influenced a lot of games. That I think it does really well. One of the things that the game does a lot is there is like a story and a narrative, but like kind of strung across NPCs you might never meet.
Yes.
In text boxes you just literally might not encounter. They never sit you down and explain like who the king used to be or what this place used to be like before it was so bleak, or is there hope in general? Like, are you playing a game where it's a bunch of doomed people? I beat it twice and I don't really know. You know,
I've beat it like 100 times, and that's what YouTube's for, right? It's just like playing Dark Souls, where it's like, if you want to know really anything about the story, you go to YouTube, and somebody who's done way more research on it tells you what their interpretation is. and that just becomes like the accepted lore. For Dark Souls, we've got like VadiVidya, who does all his lore videos, and then for Hollow Knight, we have like Mossbag, and he's just the lore guy. So their interpretations tend to be like the accepted canon, but it's kind of hard to. I would say almost impossible to actually know the lore like from the game itself. The first time I played it, I just thought it's a cool aesthetic. You're going through this ruined kingdom of bugs, and like you just get to, I don't know, you get to see the fallout of like some horrible tragedy that's befallen them, and you don't really understand why it has or what's going on. You keep meeting these mysterious NPCs that all also seem to be like travelers through the world, or that don't really have any stake in what's happening.
It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that we're all just bugs.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to talk about the bugs, right? Because I think that's such an interesting choice that I think brings a lot to Hollow Knight. The fact that they're bugs, right? They're extremely inhuman in a lot of ways. Like, some of them, most of them are like bipedal and stuff, at least that, but they're not humanoid in any way. They don't evoke anything in you when you see them. They're very strange, and it made the entire world, like, they had to rethink the whole world in terms of bugs, which is just something I think you don't really see a lot. Even in indie games, they tend to stick with, humans and such. If we're going to talk about like an apocalyptic world, it's going to be like a human apocalypse. But this was like, what the fuck happened to this bug city? That's such a cool premise that I think Hollow Knight just doesn't get enough credit for.
Yeah, I don't have much to expand on the bug thing. I wanted to go back to the last thing we were saying, and it kind of all ties in together to kind of how I feel about this sort of storytelling. I don't have a term for it, but the Dark Souls storytelling of, we don't actually tell you the story. I kind of think of it as what I call like playground theory. Now, we live in the internet day, and that's not really how we communicate anymore. But like when you're young and you're playing these old games, and there's all this stuff that you couldn't possibly penetrate, because old games some of them just because they were poorly designed, didn't tell you what was in the game. You would go to school the next day and talk to your friends and be like, did you know if you went over here and you did that, this happens, and that can do that. And I felt like that brings a community together, right? Like, these are one of these games where if I play Hollow Knight around a friend who hasn't played the game, they'll just ask like 10 questions. They'll be like, what is that? Why is this? Why is this? It's not just they're just trying to figure it out because it's in front of them. It's generally, it makes you want to ask these questions where they show you something like, why are everyone bugs? What is that about?
Yeah.
Are you even a good guy? Like, what is the point of what you're doing that Dark Souls in this game do that I think actually gets you to focus more on what the world is than just having something like, you're the chosen hero who has to collect these orbs to stop the infection, or whatever bullshit normal game shit there would be.
Yeah, I actually find that interesting, right? Because in this internet age, it's really hard to develop real communication about games. Like, back in the day, we all had to spread rumors about like Pokemon Red and Blue, how you could catch Mew if you do the right movements around a truck in Cinnabar Island, that kind of thing, Like, none of it was true.
Only 90 kids, am I right? You get it.
Draw a weird S on your binders now.
And if you're from the 90s, you might not know about Twitter. Follow us at bossdoor4.
Yeah, bossdoor in the letter 4.
Only 90s kids.
Only 90s kids.
And all kids, please.
If you're born after the 90s, do not follow. No, I'm kidding. Follow us immediately. But, boy, I was fully derailed. Those kind of things were possible because of the lack of internet. Back in the day, you just had to share things amongst your friends. And with the advent of the internet age, where everything has its own wiki that you can just look up and see like every granular detail of a game, it's really interesting to see how games still build community interaction, despite the fact that you don't technically need that, right? And so games like Dark Souls are so impenetrable in their lore and in all the little secrets and stuff that are hidden. Even if you get the wiki open, there's a good chance you miss stuff, unless you're just really thorough about it, There's always a chance, and there's so many things, there's always a chance you've just, like, forgotten stuff, right? So, inevitably, when you play it with somebody, there's something that they don't. There's some information that you can pass to your friends. And the same is true of Hollow Knight. And my favorite example, and one of the biggest reasons I think Hollow Knight is so big, honestly, and I'll get into that in a minute, is the fact that you can pogo on, well, you can pogo on spikes, but you can pogo on anything, which is when you down slash and it pushes your character upwards. I know we had this experience. I told you, Joey, we could pogo on spikes, and you're like, what? You can pogo on spikes? You know?
Yeah, I have a friend who's playing at the same time, and he was talking about the Moss Knights. There's these Moss Knights early on, right, who have shields, and like it's early enough in the game where you don't have like really any powers, and like they just have shields and like kind of hard to kill.
They're pretty tough enemies. They take like 3 fireballs in 1 nail swing to kill, which is a lot.
Yeah, and then he basically asked me, he's like, wait, can you down/down? Like, separate time, not playing, not having the controller in front of him. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's like really useful all the time. And then the next time I saw him, he's just like, so you can down/? And it was just like, it's changed everything.
Yeah, it really does, right? And they don't tell you that you can do that. And it's not readily apparent, I feel, because you can only do it when you're in the air, and usually when you're in the air, you're probably just up slashing and side slashing. You're probably not thinking about slashing below you unless something gets below you. It's not a common thing to be able to attack downwards. It's way less common. This is I think a crux of what makes Hollow Knight so successful as a game, is the fact that you can pogo on things. It pushes you up, it resets your double jump and your dash, which allows you to do crazy shit. It allows you to do stuff that's like the floor is lava, you know, and I just have to pogo on everything, and I can keep dashing around, and I can keep moving, and it makes the game feel like a really fast-paced platformer, something closer to like Celeste than Metroid, you know?
Yeah, so I want not to constantly talk about Super Metroid parallels. See, there's actually a Super Metroid parallel. The first missile expansion you get, there's tiles underneath you that you can see with your eyes that you can destroy. And I think it's literally there to say, like, you can shoot down, you know. And for me personally, that's something I like in a game, where it feels like there's stuff hidden in the game that you could constantly find. And it doesn't feel like you learn everything in the game, like, from a cursory glance. There can be moves that can be hidden. There can be so many secrets you can't even fathom. Like, I was really thorough. I was tearing through this game. I did more or less 100% run. There's DLC and BS. It gave me 104% because all Metroidvanias decided that 100% is just not good enough.
Yeah, this game goes to 112.
And to do that is too much effort.
It's honestly beyond most people that play this game.
But anyways, I felt like, you know, I had gotten like the fully upgraded nail. I've gotten all of the charm notches. Like, I felt like I got most of the secrets I was looking for. And then Ross came over, and like within like 20 minutes, he pointed out like 15 rooms. Yeah. Right? He's like, oh, that's a breakable wall that has this thing over here. It's not that important, but it's cool. Here's something over here. That's a breakable wall. And just every inch of the game is filled with little secrets and little stuff that is really like, it just makes it feel like I'll never know everything that's in the game, which has pros and cons to me in some ways. But in a Metroidvania, that's a cool feeling where you're like, there's this over here that I never ever thought about. And that, I think, is the appeal of the genre a lot, where you basically have a map in your head memorized. And over time, each of these rooms represent different upgrades or like story bits or, you know, funny moments that every room kind of has like an emotional impact on you over time.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't go so far as to say like every room in the game is important, but every room in the game is original and interesting in its own way. Like, every room is distinct from every other room, and every area of the game is distinct from every other area in such a way that I think you don't have that in a lot of the early Metroid stuff, like Super Metroid. The areas are distinct, but a lot of the rooms are very similar, so it becomes hard to remember like where you need to go for specific things. Like, you're like, okay, I got a power up, but where's all the green doors that I've seen, that kind of thing. But when I think about Hollow Knight, it's like, okay, well, I got Desolate Dive, which is the down smash ability, which lets you break through breakable floors. You probably have a good picture of at least where every breakable floor you've seen is. Even if you don't know how to get there, you'd be like, okay, there's one in Crystal Peaks, there's one in other places. I can't think of them right now, but there's a bunch around, and you probably remember distinctly like what the room looks like that was there, because they are all interesting in their own way.
I would say most of the rooms actually leave, maybe not important is the right word, but they have an emotional impact. Even if there's nothing really in the room, sometimes you're like, ah yes, the way the enemies are set up, and the way the obstacles are set up, it makes me feel something. Like, there's one room that I can't think of anything important in it, but there's just a bunch of flowers that shoot like very slowly moving bombs, and there's like mushrooms in the way that you can like bounce on, but the mushrooms in that room aren't used for bouncing unless you're trying to kill the plant, which most people are just going to avoid. They're there to make it harder to avoid the bombs.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing else in the room but that. But when you start going through that room and dashing, it's just a fun and interesting room that, like, I went through that room a bunch of times. But every time, like, I enjoy it. Like, it gives me, it's like when I play a lot of platformers. It's like when I replay a platformer level over and over and over again because I'm rebeating the game. Like, you're just going back to the same shit. But it's like, if anyone's played Mario, they've gone through the same shit a whole bunch of times. That's how you play Mario.
Yeah. What you're saying is we need to do a tier ranking of all the rooms in each area.
I did that. Did you not read the Google? You never read the Google Doc. Where I'm meticulous with my opinions.
To be fair, that is one tier list I haven't seen. All Fungal Waste rooms ranked.
I like Fungal Waste, I think, more than everyone else.
I like Fungal Waste well enough.
I think it's like the third or fourth best area.
I like the bouncy mushrooms, and especially after you get dash, down slashing the mushrooms and then dashing through the area. Usually you can, like, pogo dash, all the way through, like, a lot of the rooms, and that's a lot of fun. That's a really fun move mechanic, which kind of brings me back to what I was saying, how this game has a feel that's, like, similar to Celeste, in that it's a lot of jumps and dashes and stuff like that. You move through rooms quickly, and when you get good at it, you move through rooms fluidly in a way that, like, most platformers don't give you. Because a lot of platformers, what they give you is a jump, and it's just jumping from platform to platform accurately. In this game, there's so many different ways to move, and it all really starts with the invention of the pogo, which I think is like really one of the crowning achievements of this game.
So something that I can't stop doing, I want to kind of compare to Super Metroid, but also Castlevania. So one thing I would like to say with a really smart thing a lot of these indie games that are homaging older games do is understand that movement abilities are fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to have lots of movement abilities. Now, as a game designer, it makes it harder for you to make challenges. Because if you can do whatever you want in the air, it's naturally easier to dodge stuff.
Yeah.
So, it raises the bar for you, the game developer. For some reason, I assume the audience is game developers for this conversation. But it raises the bar for you to figure out ways to make that not game-breaking. The way the game does movement in this game is awesome. So one thing about Super Metroid, I would say, is the movement in Super Metroid is actually great, though things like wall jumping are incredibly hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where if you're really, really good at Super Metroid, you can watch people speedrun the game, and it looks unfathomable. But it's like you're just flying through the air the whole game. And even in Super Metroid, you get a move called Screw Attack, or Space Jump, where you actually fly through the air, and you never have to touch the ground. And that's one of the best parts of the game. The other side of Metroidvania is Castlevania. Now, if you play the Castlevanias, one thing they do is actually the opposite of it, where they try to make Simon Belmont, or whichever one you are in whatever game you're playing, feel like a heavy tank, right? Like you're going, like you feel like a 200-pound man as you move through the game. And that has pros and cons. It makes you care more about your weapons than it cares about your movements. The better weapons upgrades you get, the easier it is to traverse the world because you can just kill things from far away by throwing crosses.
Yeah, it's like the basis of the early Resident Evil games.
Yeah.
Is their tank controls.
Yeah, sure. At some point we might play one of those.
Yeah. Can't imagine when.
Yeah. It's October next month. You know that?
What?
So one of the reasons, like, I'm so convinced that it's obvious they're influenced by Dark Souls, right? It's just obvious. You could say this Hollow Knight is influenced by a bunch of different Metroidvanias, right? But it really feels like it's Super Metroid. And there's two reasons I think that. One is the jumping mechanic is similar. In Metroid games, the longer you hold the button, the more you go up, right? I'm doing it with my hand. I do this all the time on the cast. Pretend I'm moving my hand up and down.
He means they're analog controls. So you can press it, and depending on how hard you press it, you'll jump higher, or how long you press it.
Yeah, and it's really sensitive, too. There's a ton of variability in that jump. And the first time you start doing it, it feels a little weird, because a lot of games are just used to like, maybe having a long jump and a short jump, and that's it.
Yeah, it's actually still one of the big challenges I have in speedrunning, is, like, learning to do full jumps and attack at the same time. Because a lot of times I want to hit the jump button and then just start swinging, but you just do a short hop instead.
Yeah.
You know?
One of the things it does effectively in the gameplay, it doesn't just matter that you're landing on the platforms. It matters what's above your head. You can have spikes or thorns or whatever, where you also can't jump too high. You have to jump just right. And it takes a second to get used to, but when you do get used to it, you just kind of feel like you're floating through the map.
Yeah.
Especially when you have your dash, when you learn how to do your pogos, when you get your double jump. The further you get into the game, the more you feel like you have control. So one of the reasons when I beat the game, I immediately started the file over was I can now play with the base character with none of the upgrades, but I move better. I feel like the level 1 character now has upgrades, and those upgrades are my skill. And that's a really, really, really good feeling, in my opinion, in games.
Yeah, I can actually, I can attest to this, like, really personally. I've been learning the any percent route, which in the any percent speedrun, all you get is the dash, and it's like the first thing you get, and you use it for most of the run. What'll happen is I'll play the whole run with dash, and then I'll start over for another one, and I'm already, like, hitting the trigger on the controller, trying to dash, and I don't have it yet. And I feel almost naked in the game until I get dash, and I'm like, this feels right, you know? I can move again. I'll play that, and then I'll play my superpowered character that has all the abilities and all the charms and stuff, and I'm like, I'm a god. I can just fly. I can do whatever I want. Because all of the abilities make you really feel their presence, and when you start over a new file, you really feel their lack at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's just interesting to the experience. Again, that's why I think eventually we should do a Dark Souls 1 too, but the best thing about Dark Souls, in my opinion, is every time you do something again, you feel better at it. Even if years have happened between your playthroughs. There's been times where I'm like, man, I struggled through my first Dark Souls file, and the next time I play, everything clicked even more. And then next time I play Dark Souls again, I'm going to beat it even faster, because they build a skill ceiling in that's really high. So you constantly feel like you're getting a little bit better, and you're constantly understanding things a little bit better. And to me, that's what makes gameplay mechanics good.
Yeah.
Right? Is if you feel more comfortable with them, they start to fit on your hands better. Like anything that used to feel clunky stops feeling clunky. And that's what, to me, is an easy way to find out when mechanics are bad. Is when no matter what you do, you're like, this jump is stupid and my character weighs 10,000 pounds and I have to go to this exact edge of the thing and I still miss it. But the game is not easy. Like, you're going to die. No one is ever playing this game the first time and not getting any death. You're going to die a whole bunch of times. But just like Dark Souls, every time you die, you understand why you died. And you're probably going to be better set up to not have those things happen again. And that just feels good, because the big problem with games is when you die and it just feels like there's nothing I could have done. That was stupid. I feel like shit.
Yeah, but unlike Dark Souls, this game remains challenging through the entirety of the game. Because when you beat this game the first time, it unlocks the Steel Soul mode, in which you play the game on a hardcore difficulty, a 1 life difficulty. If you die, it erases your progress, right?
That did not seem fun to me.
No, but a lot of people do it. Even average players, they're not speedrunners, they're not like high-level players or anything. They just love the game. They're like, yeah, I'll do some Steel Soul attempts. I'll lose a lot, but like, yeah, maybe one day I won't. What I mean when I say this game stays challenging, you get all your upgrades and everything, and you feel very strong, and that can definitely unbalance some of the game. Like, if you find some of the early game bosses, because sometimes they're hidden, if you find some of the early game bosses in your late game, they're done. They're just destroyed. It's not even a fair fight. If you find some of those bosses in the early game, it could be a real fight, But my biggest illustration of the point that this game stays challenging is that after you get the first Dreamer, and you need to get 3 Dreamers to unlock the fight against the Hollow Knight, the final boss. But once you get the first Dreamer, or the Monarch Wings,
Which is double jump.
Yeah, you're double jump. The Crossroads, which is the first area in the game, becomes the Infected Crossroads. Which, for a while, because Joey, you mentioned this, you were like, I liked going through the Crossroads as a late game character because I just annihilate everything in my way. It's fun to just be like, look how powerful I am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Team Cherry was like, no, fuck that. You're going to fight like super strong enemies now. And Infected Crossroads, I would argue, is the most dangerous area in the game.
That's brutal.
Most of the enemies just explode like bombs and do 2 hearts worth of damage, which is double everything else. They chase you. They're fast. They have a lot of health, even for late game. And it's like, yeah, Infected Crossroads is actually brutal. And most of the bosses maintain their difficulty. Like, there's not like an order you're gonna meet all the bosses in, but you certainly don't want to do Watcher Knights with low end gear. You'll go against Watcher Knights and you'll be like, no, I need to get some power ups for this. This is really hard, and they're never like super easy. A lot of the bosses, even the in game bosses, do not become super easy. They just become a lot more manageable with power ups, and that's because I think Hollow Knight wanted to prioritize challenge as experience rather than like just the feeling of getting stronger. Because even in Super Metroid, you go back to the early areas, and you're like, fuck yeah, my beams are ridiculous now. You know, I just annihilate everything. And the same thing is true in Dark Souls. It's like, okay, well, the first time I came through, I had a broken short sword, and everything was difficult. And the second time I came through here, I had dual great swords, and I was like a god. This game just doesn't have that, really. Kind of some areas, but for the most part, like, everything stays pretty consistent. And you can see this the most in like their last DLC, the Godmaster DLC, which was just a bunch of boss rushes, culminating in the Pantheon 5, which is a boss rush of all, I forget how many bosses, 42, 45, something like 42 bosses, and some new ones that are upgraded versions of old bosses. And that's the last thing they released, and they were just like, there's like endings locked behind doing Pantheon 5, which most players can't complete because it's just too hard. So I really think Team Cherry's idea of this game, even when you think it's inspired by Dark Souls, I think this game's harder than Dark Souls in a lot of ways.
I think it depends on what you're good at. I found this game way easier than Dark Souls, and I saw a lot of people online complaining about how hard it was. And the only thing I got stuck on was the aforementioned Watcher Knights. The Watcher Knights are so frustrating because most of the bosses are just like Dark Souls bosses, where they have like 3 or 4 attack patterns. You learn those attack patterns. There's kind of like a right answer to dodge them, right? It's like jump exactly at this time or whatever. You learn the pattern.
Definitely not jump in Dark Souls.
Yes. Roll in Dark Souls.
That's the answer to everything. Am I right, folks?
Okay, let's say roll forward, roll backwards, rolls left or right. There's kind of, a tree of this is the timing. This is when I learn it, and you find that timing.
Well, Dark Souls innovatively had 8-way rolling, where Demon Souls only had 4-way rolling.
Let's just do a Dark Souls podcast. Just kidding.
I'm just doing everything I can to derail your thought.
So the Watcher Knights are frustrating because you fight 2 at a time for most of the fight. There's 6 of them. You can kill one early. Everyone should do that. But you fight 5 to 6 guys in 2 at a time. And you know how to dodge all their patterns. But sometimes the overlapping patterns of 2 of them, it feels like there's nothing you can do and you get stuck in corners that you can't avoid. Later, you get upgrades that make the fight way easier. But you have to learn how to fight it to make those upgrades actually work. So like the first time I played it, I got stuck at it forever. Then I replayed the game with almost the only intention of getting all the upgrades and making the Watcher Knights as easy as possible, and it was really fun. I hated them so much, but I went back and just dumpstered them, and I had tons of fun. There's one other boss fight I want to use to kind of talk about the way the difficulty curve works, though. I missed somehow this boss called the Mantis Lords. It's pretty early in the game, and actually there's literally someone near the Mantis Lords that said, maybe you should go to City of Tears and upgrade your sword first. Because these are our harder boss fight.
That actually only happens if you lose to the Mantis Lords the first time.
Yeah.
Then Quirrell shows up and is like, wow, you know, there's some pretty tough opponents down there. Maybe go get a sword upgrade.
Yeah, that's cool. Then they are kind of a harder early game boss fight. But the first time I played it, I had all the upgrades. Like I was max powered. But you still have to, like, I died until I learned their patterns. Like, you always have to learn their patterns. I played a lot of fights broken after when I was supposed to fight them, my first playthrough. And it wasn't until I at least learned how to dodge all their things that I actually could beat them, and I couldn't just overwhelm them with the damage of my spells weapons and amount of health that I have. And, like, that's pretty satisfying that even at endgame, you still have to at least learn how to play it. And then I replayed the file so I could fight Mantis Lords normally. One of the other big reasons I want to play is wanted to fight some boss fights the way you should fight them, a little underpowered. And I already knew what to do. And the fight was still, kind of hard, but very fun. And I think that's like a good testament where a thing you find in the first 2-3 hours of the game could still fucking kill me.
Yeah.
When I had every upgrade in the whole game.
Well, I actually think there's a really good opportunity to talk about like the boss design in this game because it varies all over the place. Mantis Swords are my favorite fight in the game, excluding maybe Sisters of Battle from the Godmaster Pantheon, in which you just fight all 3 of the Mantis Swords together instead of just 2 of them. But the basic Mantis Sword fight is just 3 Mantis Swords. You challenge them in this little arena, and you fight one of them and defeat him, and then the other 2 stand up and they fight you together. So you learn the combos that they do through fighting one of them, and then you fight 2 of them at once, and it's like it's this beautiful flow of attack and dodge, and it's just, I think it's exactly what this game was designed to do with its combat and movement. I think it's a perfect fight for the Hollow Knight system.
You can watch someone play and you're like, that was good footwork.
Exactly.
And like that's always a sign of a game to me, where it's like the way you just kind of were on the heels of your toes, even though you can't do that in the game, it feels like that. Like you feel like you're on not the heels of your toes. The opposite of that. I've been in a fight before.
The old toe heels.
Toe heels, yeah. I walk around like
Didn't I teach you how to fence once?
Yeah, I just walk on my heels and then people just push me and I fall over. It's a terrible fighting style.
Yeah. Well, that's something you don't get in Dark Souls. Like, Dark Souls is like, oh, that was a good roll, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, good avoiding those attacks. Excellent work. And then you swing your big sword or you do whatever does damage. But when you fight Mantis Swords, it feels like fencing. It's this like wonderful give and take of battle, and I really think it's a perfect fight for Hollow Knight. But then there's the Watcher Knights, which are 5 to 6 bugs, and they roll into a ball and try to hit you. And when they're in ball form, they're invincible, and you usually are fighting 2 at once. The problem is they can start their attacks from off screen, and between the 2 of them, they can give patterns that you can't dodge. So you should come back with like Shade Cloak, which allows you to dash through obstacles and enemies without taking damage. So a lot of times, if you get Shade Cloak and they come at you with like an attack pattern you can't dodge, you just dash through it with the Shade Cloak. But doing like the 80% run, we don't have Shade Cloak. So we just have to get really good at Watcher Knights, like fighting them as fast as possible, just doing as much damage as fast as possible, because it's the only way to end the fight reliably and quickly. Watcher Knights are a terribly designed fight. I don't think they're like a bad idea. I think fighting multiple enemies is fine. You've got like in Dark Souls, you've got like Ornstein and Smo, which is a fine fight. It's a janky fight, but it's a fine fight.
And it's a similar problem where it's 2 guys at once.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard, where Dark Souls is already hard to dodge everything, and now you have to dodge stuff that you might not actually notice on the side, but the difference between Watcher Knights and Ornstein and Smo is you can at least learn the fight in Ornstein and Smo.
Yeah, well, in Ornstein and Smo, you've got Ornstein who moves really fast and Smo who moves really slow. It's possible to like separate them and manipulate their AI, and you've got pillars that can block their attacks. Like, the arena and the bosses themselves are designed to work in such a way that you can just isolate and take one down.
And the thing they'll say that makes that actually work is an average player can do that.
Yeah.
You don't need to look up how to manipulate their AI. You start trying to do it, and you see success. Like, the fight gives you the control to experiment.
Yeah.
Whereas Watcher Knights, it's like, we're doing exactly this until it's over.
Yeah, like, Watcher Knights feel like bullshit. Like, they're not a terrible concept for a fight, but they're so badly designed that they just feel like bullshit all the time. And that makes them really unfun. You're like, I can't believe how hard this boss is compared to other bosses.
And it's the only fight in the game, I feel like, where sometimes it feels like you got bad RNG on the patterns.
Yes.
Where you're rooting for them to do like an easier pattern for you to win. Whereas everything else in the game, you're like, I can dodge everything this boss does. It's just doing it.
Yeah. So many fights are like, okay, I can be at 1 health, but if I play perfect, then I can survive and win. But in Watcher Knights, it's like, no, that's not true. If you play perfect, they can still just present you an undodgeable pattern and you lose either way. And that sucks, right? Like, that's not good design for a game that's so mechanically focused on challenge through combat. The other example I have is the Dream Warriors, which were all based on Patreon submissions, like the people who funded the game, or sorry, Kickstarter. The people who...
They're synonyms.
Yeah, they really are. But a lot of people backed the game, and some backers got to submit like a boss idea, and sometimes just like just a drawing with a little bit of maybe backstory. They didn't design the boss fights. Now, Dream Warriors, their health scales off the level of your sword, which is called a nail. I'll probably call it a nail sometimes. I'm going to keep trying to call it a sword so people understand what I'm saying. But your sword can be upgraded 4 times, and the health of the Dream Warriors scales off how much you've upgraded your sword. If you get, like, your spells and stuff, if you get overpowered without ever upgrading your sword, Dream Warriors are a joke. And some of them are a joke anyway, because their design varies wildly. Marmu's just
I think they're all a joke.
Well, Marmu's just a beach ball that flies at you and you hit him, and it doesn't matter how much health he has, right? No Eyes is just teleports around the arena and summons ghosts off screen that just kind of float sideways, and all you have to do is sort of jump between them. It's not hard. It doesn't matter how strong you are. Galen turns himself and summons a couple of things that are balls that fly around the arena, just like Watcher Knights. And when he's high health, he's bullshit. It's like Galen can be super hard.
Spam whale, killed him easily.
Yes,
full grab credit
if you
sword.
have whale, right? But if you don't have something like that, if you just have a highly upgraded nail and you find Galen, that fight's gonna suck.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a lot of trouble with Galen in the past, and I've had no trouble with Galen in the past, because bosses in Hollow Knight, you can encounter them in different ways with different levels of power, and that is part of the experience, but it also means, like, you are going to have different experiences with each boss between each playthrough. People, it can be like that. You're like, oh, I had no trouble with Galen, and I'm like, I had a ton of trouble with Galen.
So I actually think every Dream Warrior is kind of badly designed.
Most of them are.
Because they all are like, we do one attack pattern.
Yeah.
Just avoid that attack pattern. And, like, you learn it really quickly. And then it's just how good are you at dodging that and how much damage you can do. And they all seem super susceptible to spell. They all just float above your head. And there's one spell that's called Abyssal Whale.
No, Abyss Shriek.
And you just send magic upwards. And it does a fuck ton of damage. And there's ways to modify your damage. We haven't really talked about charms yet. We will in a second. But you can make it just do a fuck ton of damage. And every one of those fights, like, most of the bosses in the game, even on a replay, I'll die to, like, maybe once or twice before I get my feet on it. Every Dream Warrior, I just kill in a fucking second.
Yeah, it's rare. Like, if you know how to play, I think if you've got good spells and you know what you're doing, it's rare to, like, die to a Dream Warrior.
Yeah, but they're cool. They all look good. I actually think, like, all the Dream Warriors, other than No Eyes, are aesthetically interesting looking. And you get a mechanic called Essence that is more or less just a I don't even know how to describe Essence.
It's like a currency. It's just a way to upgrade the Dream Nail, really.
But, like, you give it to a person and they give you random rewards.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's not a collectible, but it is functions like a collectible.
It's not a currency because you don't even spend it. It's just there's one basically a vendor who's like, come to me when you have 300 essence. Come to me when you have 500 essence.
It just gives you a passive thing to do around the environment while you're exploring.
Yeah, and at the end, if you get 1800, you get the Awoken Dream Nail, which allows you to unlock the true ending of the game. So you fight the Hollow Knight, and then you get the secret boss, the Radiance. And you get essence mostly for fighting Dream Warriors.
I think we should maybe want to just, like, talk about, like, a little bit more because we talk about, like, movement mechanics. Maybe we can talk about, like, the other kind of almost more RPG elements, like charms.
Yeah, we definitely have to talk about charms.
Well, I mean, like, right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about charms.
Yeah. Cut out the, like, right now. Like that, like, tiny aside.
Well, no, I'm not gonna. So...
Please cut it. I'll do that every time I really want something cut.
I don't like the power that gives you over me.
You have the editing power.
I know, I like that power.
You have all of the power.
That's the power I enjoy. The one that's mine. So charms are the way that this game allows you to customize your character. You know, you can get the normal power-ups and stuff, but then charms allow you to do weird stuff, you know? So you get your Vengeful Spirit, which is like a fireball spell that you spit out, but then you get Shaman Stone, a charm that makes your spell stronger. So now you shoot out a bigger fireball. You have your Abyss Whale, and then you put on Shaman Stone, it's even bigger, and stuff like that.
Best charm in the game.
It might be Shaman.
It's definitely.
It almost certainly is. There's nothing more powerful in the game than spells, and Shaman Stone is a very cheap charm that makes your spells very strong. So Yeah, I mean, it probably is just overall the strongest charm in the game. But there's a lot of cool ones too, like companion charms, like Weaver Song and Glowing Womb that summon like little spiders and stuff that follow you around. And they mostly suck, but like we've seen on your playthrough, with the right charm combinations, you can turn them into a pretty deadly little army that follows you around.
There's several charms that put like physical things in the environment. Like one's a shield that rotates around you that will block some amount of damage.
It'll block an attack, and it also does damage if it runs into enemies.
Yeah, so it's like a little cool thing. So I put on every single charm that just made my character look like it was covered in shit. So I'm just running around. There's like a little poop cloud around me because the Dung Defender drops it. It's rotating shield charm, and then just like a bunch of bugs following me. And so I went into like the normal final boss of the game. Did not learn his patterns at all because I couldn't see him and just kind of jumped in the air. Turns out the charm Weaver Song that has little bugs attack them, if you combine it with the charm that makes you a poop cloud, it just makes them suicide bomb.
Yes.
And I didn't even know that. I was just putting on the most obnoxious thing. So the final boss, the first time I played it, just suicide bombing bugs the whole time, as I had no idea what the boss was doing. And it took me like 2 tries. They just died to all the crap I had on me. And like, that's cool. Like, you can play the game in a completely unique way, which is really fun. And there's a bunch of little stuff. There's a bunch of charms that just increase your quality of life in interesting ways. So, for example, when you look at the map, you can't see where you are on the map. There's a compass charm that shows it to you. There's, whenever you're healing, you use soul you get from hitting enemies. Every time you hit an enemy with your sword, you get mana. That's how you do your spells, right? They call it souls. I don't like to call it souls because there's already this whole Dark Souls comparison.
Yeah.
And like in Dark Souls, you collect souls, and when you die, they're all at where you died. That happens in this game too, but it happens with your money. And so, like, it just gets confusing. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but it's just, I'm going to call it mana for the rest of the cast.
I definitely want to talk about Shade because it's interesting.
Yeah, of course. So when you have a thing where you can focus your mana and you heal in one place, but there's a charm that allows you to turn to a little bug and move while you're healing, which makes it easier to heal in a boss fight, because sometimes it's really hard to find time to heal in a boss fight.
Yeah.
And there's just lots of little things, like your Shade that can dash through people. You can now make it do damage.
Yeah. There's also a couple of charms that, like, one speeds up how fast you heal, and another one that makes you heal 2 masks, I think, instead of 1 mask. Master Hearts in this game, it's just your health. So you can combine the charm that makes you heal faster, heal more, and turns you into a slug that you can move around as you're healing. And you can just make a heal build where you're like, I may not be very good, I can't like do a ton of damage, but I can heal like a monster. And that's viable in a lot of weird situations, a lot of boss fights and like the Colosseums and stuff. It's completely viable to like just throw together a heal build.
And 2 things that I think make this system have depth and complexity that are fun. One, there's charm notches. Every charm has a number of notches it uses, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of a 5. But usually it's 1 through 4. How many notches it takes, and you start with like 4 or 5 notches.
3.
And you start with more than 3. You have to.
No.
Right?
I'm pretty sure you just have 3. It's not 5. It might be 4. Pretty sure it's 3.
Ooh, if you disagree, please write us in at bossdoor4.
Yeah, let us know your opinion on how many charm notches you start with.
Yeah. Please, do it instead of Wikipedia for us. There's an opportunity cost to each charm. Some charms like, holy shit, that does a good thing, but it takes more notches. And they're pretty good at, like, Shaman Stone takes 3 notches. That's almost the highest. And that feels, like, fair.
Yeah.
If Shaman Stone costs 2 notches, it would almost be game breaking.
It would be game breaking.
And so they did really good at balancing, how many charms can fit in. They also did a good job at the charms having synergy with each other. So some charms work better with other charms and yada yada. They also did a good job at some bosses, certain charms are better against them. So the charm, for example, that makes you, when you dash through someone, it makes them do damage, is incredible against the final boss.
Yeah, Sharp Shadow.
Yeah, Sharp Shadow. It is so good against the final boss. And there's some bosses you literally will never Sharp Shadow through, just the way you fight them.
Good against Watcher Knights, too.
Yeah.
Any boss that you would normally do a lot of dashing through for dodging, Sharp Shadow's pretty good against that.
It encourages you to change your charms from boss fight to boss fight, because certain charms work better. Like, sometimes I have charms that make me heal quicker, But some bosses, I will never have a time to heal.
Yeah.
So there's no point in doing it. There's a couple of charms. There's like Joni's Blessing, which costs 4 slots, that says you can't heal, but you get a bunch of extra mask. And I'm like, cool, I can't heal in this boss fight anyways, so I'm just going to go with Joni's Blessing. And there's kind of a lot of boss fights I personally used that charm for. To kind of say what I think makes something good design or bad design, with sort of what I would call like RPG elements in games, things where you kind of make builds more or less, it's way better to have a game that has builds where there isn't an obvious right answer.
Yeah.
There is kind of an obvious right answer. I think Spell Twister and Shaman Shone more or less is the best thing you could do in the game, and you can do it all the time.
Yeah, it's rare that you would ever want to take those off.
But
you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to, and it's fun not to, and you're encouraged not to, and it isn't so overwhelming that you're always going to do that. And also, most people who play the game the first time, I don't think use spells as much as they should.
No, yeah, spells are overpowered, and a lot of people don't recognize that, because most of the time you're fighting is just like little dudes, and you just use your nail, and sometimes you cast spells, but like, bosses should be spelled wall to wall. You know, there's nothing better you can do than cast spells at bosses. That being said, the other thing I really like about charms is the way the game encourages you to find charms, which is by giving you charm notches. Because when you go to Salubra, who is essentially the charm dealer, she says, I sell all these charm notches, because charm notches are things you can find in the world, and you can get up to 11 of them. Now, she says, I sell charm notches, but you have to find so many charms before I'll sell them to you. So, once you find 5 charms, once you find 11 charms, once you find, etc., you will get more charm notches, which incentivizes you to find more charms. Because finding more charms makes you more powerful and gets you more charm notches, which allows you to equip more charms. It's a little engine that makes you want to build your character. And by doing that, it forces you to explore the world, because Salubra doesn't have all the charms. She doesn't have most of the charms. She just has some good ones that you can pick up. But there are a lot of charms in the world that you just have to find or buy from other vendors and things like that.
Charms for me are part of what this game does better than most Metroidvanias. I think one of the most important gameplay elements of every Metroidvania is the game is full of collectibles. So many different types of collectibles. You know, I'm going to keep using Super Metroid as an example, but you get missile expansions, you get bomb expansions, you get energy tanks. You just get stuff that makes your character better and easier to traverse the world. In this game, they're really good at collectibles because they all feel really good to get. Charms are great because you just get fucking abilities.
Yes.
They all aesthetically in the charm menu are kind of meticulously designed, and they look good. Like, you can put a screen full of charms in front of me, and I can tell you what they do just by sight.
Yeah, they don't list them by name. You can hover over them, and they'll tell you the name and what they do. But the actual charm menu is just a wall-to-wall pictures of charms. And yeah, because they're so well designed, you just know what they all are.
And yeah, that's a good little touch that makes, it just feels good to get any charm. Another collectible they have is grubs. There's little kind of cute worms around the world, and you get
caterpillars.
Yeah, little caterpillars. They go to a place, and when you go to that place where they all go, you get rewards for how many grubs you collected. Right, so if you have 7 grubs, they might give you a mass charm, just like a heart piece in Zelda, or something like that. One of the reasons the grubs are fun to collect is because they're fucking adorable. They're so cute, and they make little cute noises, and you can hear them when you walk into the room, and you generally just want to go, you want to get them. If you can see a grub, but you don't see how to get there, you're going to try to get there. Even if you don't care about the reward, in my personal opinion. Yeah. You might be heartless, who cares? And so it's you're pretty incentivized to actually try to get all the collectibles. There's heart pieces, which are it's always easy in a game to prioritize getting extra pieces of health. There's mana pieces that if you get 3 of them, you get a little extra tank of mana. And even though they're not really that powerful, you're either getting 1/4 of a heart or 1/3 of one spell.
Yeah.
You get excited when you see one and you get one, and it makes you want to actually try to find the breakable walls, or try to solve an incredibly difficult platforming puzzle that makes it feel worth your time and effort.
Yeah, and the thing about mass shards and soul vessels and abilities like your double jump, your dash, and all of that is actually something I find really interesting in games, which is it gives you a little bit of downtime, because there's a lot of fanfare when you pick those things up. it's your character like hovers into the air, or something comes on screen and like very slowly, like, bam, there's your mass shard. Like you've taken the Mantis Claw, and then it tells you what Mantis Claw does, which is like give you the wall jump and stuff like that. It makes you sit with it for a bit and like think about your accomplishment. You get to feel accomplished. The game is like, hey, this is a big moment, you know? Take this moment of like quiet and safety to just sort of understand that you've done something valuable here. And it's something you don't get in a lot of games. Like I think downtime in games is something that games just don't consider, especially like AAA games these days. And I don't know. I find even when I don't care if I get more mask pieces, like even if I'm like, I probably am not even going to complete this mask before I finish the game, I'm still going to pick it up if it's there, if I can, because I just like the feeling of accomplishment that it conveys to me. It's like you did a thing, you know? And it does that because it gives you that moment to sit with it. I think it's just interesting design.
Yeah, so there's this game, I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of it, Super Metroid. So in Super Metroid...
When did that come out?
1994. Whenever... it's 93, I think. What a loser
So
I am. Similar thing, whenever you get an upgrade, it has this song that I really want to try to make with my mouth, but I know it won't sound anything like it. Edit it in, Ross. Da-da-da-da. When you get an upgrade, edit it in.
Okay.
Edit
You've
this in.
You've just heard it. The noise that I definitely found.
Yeah, please find it. It's
Nintendo don't sue me.
No, but sorry. Maybe a better example that everyone knows is the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da from Zelda. Where it's just a little serotonin. Like, over time, you associate this sound or this moment with something good, and it just excretes the thing in your brain that you're like, oh, I got the thing that I wanted. That's kind of, I think, how the lifeblood of a Metroidvania. Because you're constantly going back through areas, looking through areas, scouring every corner of the room. But you also are constantly getting positive reinforcement through things like collectibles that you're doing good. Every time you play a Metroidvania for like a couple of hours, you're like, I got a shit ton of stuff done. You're never not progressing unless you're lost.
Yeah.
But even when you're lost, sometimes you just bump into shit.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all about exploration, right? And Super Metroid was 1994? You're so dumb. 1993 is Myst. Everyone knows that.
Really? Myst is 93?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
We should not do that game next week.
Yeah, you're right. We should not do Myst next month. I want to kind of go back to what we were saying about like level design and exploration, and how like that's the heart of Metroidvanias. You know, is exploration driven by the fact that you want to find like new power-ups and things like that. You want to see what's in every corner of the map because something valuable might be there. You know, like it's the driving force. But the way that that Team Cherry actually talked about the design of the game is they were like, well, we'd start with a seed, you know, for an area. We're like, okay, this is Crossroads, this is Fungal Waste, this is Queen's Gardens, right? And as the game developed, we would add rooms, we would add things that we wanted to see in there, and the area itself would grow as part of the map. And you can see like old concept maps of what the world was supposed to look like, and they look similar to what we see now, but very different. And they're like, when Deep Nest got so big that it like reached up and touches Queen's Gardens, we would add a connection there. You know, we would just add this connection between areas.
That's interesting, because that exact connection, I found my last playthrough. I found that connection, and I was just like, "Why is this here?" Like, I literally thought that for a long time. It's like, I don't think they intend for you to really go from Deep Nest to Queen's Garden, but like it was like it's so annoying to get out of Deep Nest.
Yeah,
it is such a pain in the ass.
It is a pain in the ass. Even today, like just. Like, playing today, having played so many times, I still get lost in Deep Nest. I fucking hate Deep Nest.
Yeah, and it's, like, full of all these, like, maze-like burrows with these, like, little centipedes crawling through them.
Super claustrophobic and everything.
And it's, like, at the bottom of your map. Like, it's supposed to be, like, it makes sense. Like, there's actually, like, so there's this transportation system called Stags that are your main fast travel system. But they kind of don't reach really the bottom of the map. Like, places like
not really.
Deep Nest. And I actually kind of like it, because the Stags are kind of a part of a civilization that was built, right?
Yeah.
Like it connects the bug people, whoever.
Through the stagways.
Stagways. And when you get so deep in Deep Nest, we just don't have public transportation here because we have old abandoned trains here.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, I actually, like, it adds a little bit of flavor to an area that mostly every time I go into, I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah. And like, the areas are interesting the way they work together. Like, there's a reason stag nests aren't down there, or the stagways aren't down there, is because Deep Nest was never part of the kingdom. Deep Nest is like all feral bugs and nastiness and a horribleness there, and it's gated off by the Mantis Lords, right? Like, the Mantis Lords are literally guarding a gate to Deep Nest, and the Mantis tribe was also separate from the kingdom. They valued, like self-isolation and like strength. They're like a warrior tribe kind of people. They're like, we're not going to join you, but we're not against you. And the kingdom of Hallownest just sort of let them be because they guarded everything. They guarded Deep Nest from ever like spilling out into the greater kingdom. And instead Hallownest built, the trams and the stagways and things like that. They built a kingdom around these little tribes and stuff that wouldn't assimilate. And that was all in the past, obviously. And that's stuff that you can kind of get from the lore. You can kind of understand what's going on a little bit, but it's also stuff that you kind of just have to watch YouTube videos about it, right?
Yeah, I found a map that was the political alignment of all the people in Hallownest. And like, I don't even know what this means.
Is Quirrell a fascist?
And then I memorized. It's not even that. It's like, the Mantises are all with each other. The Hive are separate from the Hallownest, and just like kind of who's affiliated with who. And I just looked at it and memorized it real quick because like mostly they're all just one big group.
Yeah, they don't.
And then later, my friend was watching me play and asked about it. And I was like, "Well, I did look at this political map of the whole area.
Yeah.
So these things aren't connected, but I don't really know why. And it's that thing where you generate more content trying to figure out the lore than being like, well, no, I'm the one true chosen bug bullshit that another game would have done.
But of course, the area
developer would have done.
The areas and the bugs in those areas are like interesting enough that it does generate that interest from players. They're like, I want to know more about this, and they go online and they look around and it creates this community. There's a whole Hollow Knight community that just talks about the lore, and that's always interesting. The same thing happened with Dark Souls. But I do want to get a little bit back to the level design a bit, because a big thing about the level design was not only did they like just create connections where they seemed natural, where they seemed like they should be in the world based on the map that they created, they also did it intentionally. They would have multiple entrances to most areas. Almost all areas have at least 2 entrances. Mm-hmm. Some areas, like City of Tears, could have like 4 or 8. Tons of different ways to get to the same place. And I'm going to tie a lot of things together right here. When you look at your ability to down pogo on things, Team Cherry said outright, we knew this would cause sequence breaks. We didn't expect like a lot of the stuff that like speedrunners came up with at the same time, but we knew it was definitely going to cause sequence breaks. And one of the biggest ones is a speedrunning thing that pretty much anybody can do, and some people will figure it out just on their own, called shade skips. Because when you die, you drop a shade, which is this void construct. It's like the thing that animates you. You kind of leave your soul behind. And your soul is really hostile to you when you come back to get it. It's holding all your money and doesn't want to give it to you. So you have to fight it. It's not a hard fight. It mostly just like kind of comes at you, and it might swing at you or like shoot a spell. And its health is like kind of proportional to your health. But it's a physical enemy that you can lead around. And in this game, that means a lot. It means you can pogo off of it, right? So for speedrunning, it means you can skip a lot of like what would be hard barriers created for different abilities.
Yeah, most of the game is the
a lot of the game, yeah. You can go straight from the early game into City of Tears, into Watcher Knights and things like that, and you can beat the game pretty quickly, enabled by shade skips, right? Because if you lure the shade to the right spot, you just bounce on its head, and then you can get to where you're going. And that's really interesting because the world just is so open in a way that like even Dark Souls wasn't. Like Dark Souls loops back on itself, but Hollow Knight really is like this big open world, and all you need is the right ability to get around. And sometimes if you're clever, not even that. You know? You can do some weird shit if you're smart about it. And a lot of it's not even like glitches or game breaking. It's just they designed the actual goal of the game, which is just get 3 Dreamers and fight the Hollow Knight in such a way that's like, it doesn't matter what order you do that in, or if you sequence break. There's no such thing as sequence breaking when it's just collect 3 things and fight the final boss. So they designed the game in such a way that, like, it has become one of the best, if not the best, speedrunning games in existence right now. Which previously, I would have said about, like, Super Metroid. Still might. Super Metroid might be better to speedrun, but they're close.
My eyes are narrowing.
I do think it's interesting that, like, in my experience, 2 of the best speedrunning games... I mean, you could make an argument for something like Mario or something, right? But two of the best speedrunning games in the world right now are Metroidvanias.
So a couple things that made me think about. I'm not gonna.
Whoa. Is this podcast making you think?
No, you're cutting that.
If this podcast made you think, at me on Twitter.
Stop talking because I'm not using that. I'm restarting. One thing that is so, I think, unique about the Super Metroid and a Hollow Knight experience is all of the gameplay also adds to this lore story building section at the same time. So when you die and you leave behind a shade, your soul behind, that's a fun mechanic thing. There's a lot going on with that. And there's points in the game where that makes you start doing creative problem solving on how to fix your shade is just really deep in a spike pit and you don't want to lose all your money or whatever. But the other thing it does is the first time it happens and you go back and your soul's there and you didn't expect that to happen, no text box comes on your screen and says, your soul is floating where you were last.
You see it, like, leave your body, but I don't think you expect it to be an enemy waiting for you.
Yeah. It makes you, the audience, ask the question, why? And it makes you try to think about what's going on. A similar thing to compare to the other game that we won't shut up about, Dark Souls, which, again, if you haven't played Dark Souls, fuck off. Like, just give us the picture, Jesus.
Listen to our Dark Souls podcast. We haven't made it yet, but, like, I'm assuming you're listening to this in, like, 2030. So
yeah.
We've probably done it by then.
Yeah, we're big and famous now. The world's definitely not gone. Every time you enter an area in Dark Souls and Hollow Knight, usually 2 things happen. One, the background just looks different. Just what you're physically looking at is a different aesthetic. And the text comes up. Like Rain of Tears.
City of Tears.
Rain of Tears, Jesus. City of Tears. Crystal Peaks. Hollowness Peak. Right?
Hollowness Crown. Rain of Tears is the next David Cage game.
Is it really?
No.
Okay.
Doesn't it feel like it would be?
But all these little titles that come up, that, like, for example, City of Tears. And you see it, and it's just this, like, gorgeous city that's dark, and it's raining. And you just have to assume the rain is tears, because it's called City of Tears.
Well, I don't think you assume they're literal tears.
It's just fucking magic.
It's a city that's always raining.
They don't call Seattle City of Tears.
Are you sure?
I really don't.
Is that where Twilight was
really
filmed?
There's a really good Seattle Mariners baseball joke. Fuck off. I know that you and the audience won't follow it. Like, you're just asking yourself questions. Like, what do these places mean? What are they about? It's more interesting than entering an area and then a bunch of NPCs are just being like, have you heard that we have a ghost problem? Here's this ghost problem. Blah, or what, like, this is the place you're at. Here's the problem. You do this quest. That place is associated with this quest.
Yes.
Right? That's a more common way of defining an area. You give it an aesthetic, you make the gameplay tie into that aesthetic, and you move on.
Yeah, you define the area by what you do there.
Yeah. Most of the places, the most story you're getting is from the way it's built. The fact that there are no stagways at Deep Nest is the most you learn about Deep Nest, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The fact that the trains go from Deep Nest to Ancient Basin all the way to the Forbidden Kingdom.
Kingdom's Edge.
Kingdom's Edge. Ross got the proper nouns down better than I do. It makes you think about what the world was, what it used to look like. You go to Kingdom Edge and...
Kingdom's Edge is a weird one for me, because it's a weird, like, super vertical platforming room. It's, like, very, very Super Metroid in its way, but it...
Okay.
Super Metroid? You might not have heard of it. Do you know why? Do you know why it's called City of Tears? Besides the fact that it's raining? Do you know why
of course not.
Do you know why it's raining?
I know none of the lore in the game.
Well, when you look at the map, what's right over City of Tears is Blue Lake. The Blue Lake is an area that's this big, long lake that normally you would Crystal Dash across. Crystal Dash is like a dash that just like shoots you like a bullet across the
Super
screen.
fun.
So all the water from Crystal Lake just drains down, and
That's cool.
it
Yeah.
just literally filters through the rocks and falls down into the city like tears nonstop. And they call it City of Tears because it's this defunct kingdom that no longer exists. And you find some of this out by there's a traveler bug named Coral who shows up when you're in City of Tears. He's just sitting on a bench, just like chilling, looking out a window, and you sit next to him and you can talk to him. And he's just like, yeah, it's always raining here. It's like kind of interesting. I forget his actual dialogue, but
I actually know exactly. I remember that very vividly. I just don't remember what he says.
He just comments about the rain, and I think he tells you that it's from the blue lake above. He's like, of course it wasn't always called City of Tears. That only happened because of the water from the blue lake raining down from above. But it's so interesting that happened.
Yeah, there's also like a decent amount of stuff in the game where it's like there's this visual representation of something that looks clearly interesting, and there's no other information.
Yeah, like just big statues and things like that. All kinds of weird.
And like it looks important. It looks like something should be about it. To the point where I'm literally like, what the fuck is this? And everyone's like,
Yeah, like nobody knows. There just isn't any lore about it. There's all kinds of stuff like that.
And it's fun. Like that can be frustrating for some people, being like, this just feels incomplete. But it also can be fun to kind of like figure out your own lore. And like, that's like a fun thing to do. There's, I'm really fascinated with the environmental storytelling that puts the onus on the audience to kind of piece it all together. Now, Dark Souls, which we talk about a lot, has a little bit more than I would say this game does, where like the lore is hidden, but it's kind of there very explicitly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I think a lot of stuff, you just have to ask your question, what is and what is not true. So there's a really bizarre game that exists that also kind of fudges what a word game is. It simulates baseball games, but it's called Blaseball. And in the game, weird shit happens. Like there's a peanut god, it rains blood. There's so many weird shit about it. But stuff happens in the simulation of the games that makes the audience work together to figure out what's happening. To the point where former players are being fired into the gates of heaven to break it. And we have figured this out, and I don't know how.
And we also don't know why.
Why. Or someone knows why. Or someone thinks they know why. And it gets to the point where the people who make the game say, that's a better reason than we came up with, and put it in the game. And that game has a really, really, really tight-knit community because we're working together to make the world, to understand, to explain it away. And like, that's a really fun exercise as fans of something. Whereas most things that have a more traditional story, they tell the story and you decide whether that was a well-crafted story or not a well-crafted story.
Yes. I think there's a big difference between like story and narrative in these contexts, right?
Yeah, I tend to separate between story and lore.
Yeah, well, lore is like the background, It's what George R.R. Martin is writing for Elden Ring, right? Story could be like the actual events of what's going on. Narrative could be similar to that. But when I say narrative, I'm talking about like games that are explicitly about the actions happening on screen. Where in a game like Hollow Knight or Dark Souls, the story is the lore. It's about why do these places exist, Blaseball, it's not a narrative, it's really a bunch of people trying to come up with a narrative. Because when you look at Blaseball, it really is just names on a screen playing baseball, and then sometimes instead of getting an out, a rogue umpire appears and incinerates a player.
Because we open up the secret book.
Yeah, because we opened the secret book and angered the gods. But like, we don't know any more than a rogue umpire appeared and incinerated a player. And now everybody has to like decide what those players are. It's just a name, it's just a name on the screen, often a funny name, but it's just a name on a screen playing baseball. And everybody on Twitter is just like, well, actually I'm role playing this character, all the teams have like almost official accounts that are like, this is the ethos of our team. This is, they talk about
what... They have a fucking band with an entire album dedicated to only Jalen Hot Dog Fingers.
Yes.
Like, it's and this game's only been out for a year. Like, a lot has come out of this because I believe the collaborative effort.
Yeah,
you know?
and shout out to the Garages Band. Holy shit, like one of the most prolific bands I've ever seen in my life. They come out with like an album like every couple of weeks, and they're all bangers.
Yeah.
Like they're so fucking good at it too. It's wild. But you know, BlazBall again is a community creating a narrative out of the game, where games like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls are a community discovering lore. Hollow Knight has a lot of like lore tablets hidden around that you can just like read, and it tells you a little bit. It gives you cryptic information about the world, and you piece together stuff from the backgrounds and stuff that different characters say. And every character you meet can have like a different, well, every character you meet has like a little quest kind of thing that they do. They move around the world in specific ways depending on what you do, and most of them have like some kind of ending. If you see a character, there is a final position in the world that they can be in, if they're not like just a vendor that stands there, you know? So everybody has like a complete arc, even if that arc is like, you got crushed by a Moloch in the arena, you know? R.I.P. Tiso.
That's what happens to Tiso? I was legit gonna ask you about that.
Sorry, rest in violence, Tiso.
Yeah, rest in violence.
Yeah, well, Tiso was actually also a backer character, and he was supposed to be... he was supposed to have an arc. Like, he was supposed to be a character in the game. And then I guess they ran out of time or the ability to care about him. Because because the ending of Tiso is you track him through the game and he ends up in the Colosseum. And I think I forget which Colosseum it is. There's 3 of them total. It might be the 2nd or 3rd. But basically Tiso comes out and he's like, he does the boss noise where like he's about to fight. And then it stops and a Moloch drops from the ceiling and just crushes him. And he goes, and you fight the Moloch instead. And then you can find Tiso's body down in Kingdom's Edge, where all the bodies are raining down from the Colosseum. Yeah. And you can Dreamnail his body. That's the end of Tiso. That's as much as you can say about Tiso. I think it's very funny. They promised a Kickstarter backer to, like, his character's going to be, like, something interesting in the game. And they're like, we gave up and just killed him off.
But that also is kind of interesting in itself.
It's very funny. It generates a fun story, you know?
Like I said earlier, I'm kind of obsessed with this idea, but like I just think it is really interesting, the value of generating interesting and unique discussion out of the game, or generating different experiences for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, one thing I will say is there's a lot of open world games that exist right now. I'm not actually a huge fan of open world games, because what I think they do is they procedurally generate one sort of play experience throughout the whole game. And even if you and your friend did wildly different things and went on totally different parts of the map and really never interacted with the same shit, a lot of times your experience of gameplay is still the same. If you talk to your friend about their open world experience, you more or less actually kind of just did the same things the whole time.
Yeah, it's every Ubisoft game.
Yes, exactly. Whereas with Hollow Knight, it's not like it's all these choices, change drastic amounts of the game. But one, when Ross watched me fight boss fights, and I watch Ross fight boss fights in that game, we just do them differently. I charge up my nail a lot. Ross never does it, and I found that insane. And then Ross would watch me play, and he's like, maybe just don't charge your nail up all the time. And I'm like, no, it's good and I like it. Or sometimes people find upgrades in different areas. Like, early-ish in the game, you get this dream nail that can go in people's dreams, give you mana, has a bunch of, and it's, you need it, it's a big part of the story. I found it so crazy late, it's insane. But I had like all the charm notches. I had a fully upgraded regular nail before I found the dream nail.
Yeah.
And like that was interesting. Now, like, one of the reasons I replayed the game is because I wanted to change the sequence of which I got stuff. I wanted to play with the dream nail the whole game. I just didn't. And so I didn't really see the value in it because I got it so late in the game. But when I did my new run, I constantly could just use it to like refill mana or see what random, like, if you hit someone with a dream nail, they say a line of dialogue. Usually it's just hungry, but like, it's interesting. Like, it's there and it's interesting. And I like to hear other people talk. Like, I have 2 different people I know right now currently playing the game, and I just like to talk. I just like to hear, like, what are you doing? When have you done this? What do you have now? What was your experience with this boss fight? How did you fight him? I genuinely want to hear about their play experiences. And personally, if I had a friend who was playing Red Dead Redemption, I'm never going to ask them what they're doing. Yeah. I'm not even trying to say the game's bad. I'm just saying, like, what'd you do? I I accidentally shot a guy and then had to run away for a while. It's like, me too.
Yeah. Red Dead 2 specifically.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, how did you do that? Well, I went to hit the button that's supposed to start dialogue, but I was a little too far away or wasn't targeting properly. And the same button is draw your gun. And in this game, if you draw your gun, you do hold people up. So I went to say, hey, how was your day? But I ended up robbing him.
Also,
and things spiraled out of control. I killed an entire train. I don't know. It's kind of GTA with horses.
Speaking of GTA, this is the new segment we invented called Drive-By Reviews. We'll just bring up games and be like, here's why this is good or bad for a second.
Red Dead 2, a game I've played for like, I don't know, like less than 10 hours for sure. Not much. I played all of Red Dead Redemption. I loved it. I loved Red Dead Redemption. And then I've seen everybody talk about Red Dead 2. And they're like, wow, this narrative's incredible. I love everything about it. And I'm like, yeah, but the first part of the game is so boring and slow, and then the entire gameplay is like Grand Theft Auto. And I just couldn't get into it. I literally just can't play that game because I find it so boring.
You're definitely gonna cut this, but when that game first came out, I'm like, it just looks like GTA Western, and you super argued with me,
Yeah, because
I was like, what it is?
Yeah, but I super didn't want that to be true. Because I played Red Dead 1, and I'll admit, obviously, there's some similarities to Grand Theft Auto in that they're like, okay, they're open world player choice kind of scenarios. But like Red Dead 1 was not about that. You didn't just like fuck around and steal trains and shit, you know? In Red Dead 2, that really is all you do. The game incentivizes you so heavily to just bullshit anything you see in a way that is extremely Grand Theft Auto. Because it's made by Rockstar. They make one thing.
And a lot of people are like, well, the first one was made by Rockstar. It was actually made by Capcom, and then Rockstar bought it at the very end.
Exactly.
So that's a big red flag for me. It's like whenever
a Red Dead flag.
Whenever people who's making the series changes, I have no expectations of it being like the first game.
Yeah, because the first game was Red Dead Revolver, a game that Rockstar didn't have anything to do with, and most people didn't play.
So with Hollow Knight, this is one of the games that we've been talking about. That it seems impossible for the people listening to not have at least heard of it. So at the end of the day, to you, why is it so special?
That's a good question. For a while, it was just like a game that I really liked. You know, I had played Hollow Knight, but I played it in isolation. It was just super fun. But the biggest thing about this game to me has been the community involvement. I started watching some speedrunners on YouTube. I was watching Scurry and Fireborn, who are very popular in the community, both previous world record holders and stuff, extremely talented players. I've been following Fireborn's tutorial on learning the any % route and how to play the game with no power-ups. It's fucking hard. Nobody told me how hard any % was. But the speedrunning community has done wonders for this game, for creating a community that this game can thrive in. Like I said, it's one of the best speedrunning games I think you can watch. And beyond that, the modding community for the PC version has been instrumental in keeping this game relevant and fresh and interesting. There's all kinds of things you can do. There's a bunch of like Kaizo maps that people put together that are fucking insane. There's randomizers. The randomizers have been getting really good lately with a lot of different stuff. They've gotten to the point where like you can, when you pick up an item, it could just be you can only swing your sword left. Like for the beginning of the game, you can only upswing, and then you can get left and right swing separately. And that's wild that they've put that together. There's like skins. People make skins for the night, and oh my God, those are good. Some of those skins go all the way to like redesigning all the charms even. They just look incredible. I never play Hollow Knight on PC without skins anymore. And then there's like just the YouTube community, like the lore community and things like that. And all of this has, like I said, helped keep the game fresh, but on top of that has set up a ton of hype and a ton of community excitement for Silksong, the game that's going to be about Hornet. It was supposed to be actually a DLC for Hollow Knight, but Team Cherry was just like, oh, it just got too big, and we just decided to make another game. And we've seen a lot of screenshots, a lot of gameplay about it. It looks incredible. And everybody's super, super fucking excited for Silksong because Hollow Knight was such an incredible achievement. It's a monumental game in the genre, you know, and it spawned dozens of, I don't want to call them copycats, but kind of lookalikes, like Hollow likes. I hate to say that phrase, but a ton of metroidvanias that were inspired by stuff like Hollow Knight. And so I think this game just takes this incredible little place in gaming history, and I really enjoy just interacting with the community and like just being part of something interesting like this. And I'm excited to see what happens in Silksong, where this goes.
I want to play Fire Emblem so bad now.
What's Fire Emblem?
It has a community aspect to it that I'm enjoy. Okay.
Well,
just talk about that. I just want to play it now. I want to play it. My brain is actually broken. You broke my brain.
So, do you have any final thoughts on the game?
It's fun. I like 2D games.
A simple man with simple dimensions.
There's a type of game, tends to be 2D games for me, that can be categorized as comfort food. I can now play this game whenever I just want to move my hand. Like, for example, sometimes I'm a big sports guy. Sometimes I'm watching sports, having to wait for a thing to happen that greatly affects the outcomes makes me feel huge anxiety. And so I like to have a game that I can, during those moments, unpause and just play until the referees take off their fucking headsets. And this is a great game for that for me.
Yeah.
And that's not, a real review in some senses, but like I can just play any second of it and it be enjoyable. I talk about that a lot with games where if you could play the game for 10 straight hours or 10 minutes and you had fun in both situations. And to me, that's great. That's comfort food. That's just something that I can do this until I get bored. And I'm probably not realistically going to get bored with it. Because if I get so good at the game, it's not a challenge. They put stuff in the game that keeps it fucking difficult.
Yeah.
And like, that's enjoyable. There's another game. We kind of talked about this independently, but trying to be more eclectic with, we do play more than just one game every month and kind of stuff. But another game I was playing is another indie darling game, a game called Messenger. That is a similar sort of game for me, where I can just turn on Messenger and I will always have fun with it. And I've only played this Hollow Knight game twice, but it just immediately triggered the part of my brain that Messenger also did, where I know it's going to tickle the part of my brain I'm trying to tickle.
Gross. But yeah, no, I also love Messenger. Me and you both kind of speedrun that game.
Yeah.
Not like officially we don't put times on the board or anything, but we can both beat Messenger in like a couple hours, I think.
Yeah, and it's just great. Music's banger.
Yeah,
fan-fucking-tastic.
It's super fun. It's just a Ninja Gaiden kind of thing until you like beat it the first time, and then it opens up into a metroidvania. It's a really interesting game.
It's a really clever game. It's an homage to both 8-bit style and 16-bit style, and the art style changes in the middle of it. I actually super want to talk about Messenger because I think we should talk about it actually full length at some point, or at least give it a good 10-20 minutes of why everyone should play it.
Yeah, we really want to give it its dues.
But one thing the reason I can tell that like early on this game is somewhere in my pantheon of rankings, like it might not be top 10 for me, but it might be top 10. It's close. I really do like this game a whole bunch. Is while talking about it, what have we talked about? Super Metroid, Dark Souls, Messenger, Blaseball. All my favorite things in the fucking world.
That's true.
Like it just reminds me of things that I enjoy. And in the future, other things I enjoy are going to remind me of Hollow Knight.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to put it. So you want to do a lightning round?
Sure. Yeah, you're going to want to keep that now. You're going to be like, how gross did it sound?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
It might just sound like gargly. It might sound like half the fucking characters in the game who just like you get near them and they're like... Lightning round question. See, now you have to keep it. There are a lot of parts in the game where people just make objectively annoying noises. Like, I actually like a lot of it.
Name 6.
So, Salubra. You get the Salubra charm when you collect all the charms. Whenever she goes up, she's like...
Salubra's blessing.
And you're like... And it happens every time you sit at a bench. And you're like, cool, you took... Benches are basically bonfires. They like, save and heal. I guess they don't save. They heal.
I mean, they do save. They trigger an auto.
Yeah, the game always auto saves. But like now, every time you sit at a bench, you get this annoying ass noise.
What's fucking wild is what I said earlier about games having like downtime, and benches are one of those like safe places. You sit on a bench, you can equip your charms, and you can like sort of quietly figure out what you want to do next. But now you've got Salubra going while you're sitting at the bench, and you're like, "Could you shut the fuck up while I figure out what I'm doing?" But she is refilling your mana really quickly, so like it's nice, but like god damn it,
Yeah,
they really
why
they
do that?
ruin the aesthetic of benches with Salubra's Blessing. Something I like actively won't get if I play the game in full.
But it's a really valuable thing to have.
It's incredibly valuable. It's super nice. But if I remember playing the game in full, I don't fucking need it, so I won't use it.
Any other sounds or noises that particularly jump out to you?
Well, we talked about the grub noises, right?
You like Get Good.
Okay, so Get Good is a meme in the community. To trigger the true ending, basically you fight the Hollow Knight, and if you have the Awoken Dream Nail, Hornet will come into the room and like spear him in the head with her nail, and she jumps on him, wraps him up, and brings him to her knees, and you're supposed to Dream Nail him and enter his mind and fight the Radiance. And as she brings him down, she goes, "Get good!" And it sounds like she's saying "Get good," because at the time when Radiance was introduced, he was essentially the hardest boss in the game. And it's just very funny to have Hornet yelling "Get good" as you go into like one of the hardest boss fights in the game.
So the normal final boss fight, who's the literal Hollow Knight, two things I want to say about him. One, he's kind of incredibly easy relative to everything else, but in a fun way. Like, to fight Radiance, every attempt on Radiance, the true ending boss, you have to beat Hollow Knight. And at first, I was just complaining out loud to Ross, being like, I hate when games fucking do this. But then I was just like, I kind of like fighting Hollow Knight 108 times. Like, he's legitimately fun. And there's two things. One, aesthetically cool as shit. Has this giant fucking, like, horn crown thing that, like, has a huge hitbox and can be annoying, but you can also pogo off of it. But when you first walk in, the first time you fight him, he's chained up. These 4 chains, and you have to break the chains. It's just metal as fuck.
It's super fun.
It just looks awesome and feels awesome. And when you get to, he has 2 times where he stops and he screams, and it's kind of like, you're on this form with a slightly different attack pattern. He just starts stabbing himself with, like, looks like a yarn needle.
Yeah.
Right? Or whatever.
It's a nail.
Nail. Yeah.
His is really big. Really long and thin.
Yeah, it's long and thin. That's kind of why I'm thinking about it that way. And it's just him stabbing himself. And you can't really you can do 1 damage, but no more. And just like shit's flying out of him and stuff. And it's just like, it's aesthetically cool as goddamn shit.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like similar to Dark Souls Lord Gwyn. The final boss looks the part. You might not think that Lord Gwyn should be the final boss or Hollow Knight should be the final boss based on difficulty. You might also think that. Not really here to debate that. But they certainly look like the final boss. And, like, that goes a long way for me, personally.
Yeah, they certainly deliver it as final boss material. And, like, they're both, like, aesthetically interesting, right? Because, like, Lord Gwyn he's literally guarding, you know, the first bonfire and everything. The Hollow Knight, like, the story behind the Hollow Knight is...
You meant in the flavor. I was like, Lord Gwyn, you have to beat Lord Gwyn to get to the first bonfire?
Only in certain mods. But in Hollow Knight, the story is that the Radiance is like some kind of... I mean, it's a moth, but it's like it's sort of like an infection that infects bugs and takes over their minds. And the Hollow Knight was created to be a hollow vessel. What they call a pure vessel, in which you see this in some lore, like you go down into the abyss once you've gotten the Void Heart, and you can Dream Nail into like your own mind, and you have a little memory of you climbing out of the birthplace, and you meet the Hollow Knight. But as a
section written by Christopher Nolan,
it's fucking wild. But as you're going out, these words flash on screen like "no mind to think, no voice to cry suffering," and the idea is that the Hollow Knight that the Pale King is trying to create. I'm sorry, this is so insane.
You probably will cut this, but no mind to think, no cry to suffer, right?
Yeah.
The Republican Party motto.
it kind of is, right? The idea of the Hollow Knight was to create something that had no personality, that had no mind of its own to take over. And then inside of that, they trap the Radiance so that it can't get out, right? Because the Radiance takes over the mind, and if there's nothing to take over, you can't get out. But they made a mistake. The Hollow Knight, I think, had sort of a familiar connection, kind of like a father-son connection to the Pale King, and it didn't quite work. So the Radiance has been slipping out, right? And as you kill like the Dreamers, that's why the first Dreamer turns it into the infected Crossroads, because everything that's been slowly coming out of the Hollow Knight has still been like contained in the Black Egg, the room that he's in. And as you slowly remove the seals on the Black Egg by taking out the Dreamers, it slips out into the rest of the world, and then the Crossroads becomes infected. You know,
it's interesting. There's this one room where there's these like little moss-looking people who are clearly infected, and they're all dead. And I remember I like walked to the room. I literally was trying to describe it to Ross. So he couldn't understand what I'm saying. I'm like, these guys Who are they? Explain them to me. And he's like, they're part of like the Radiance cult or whatever. He explained that he might explain after I finish talking. But then on my replay through, I went through that area earlier in the game, and they are alive at that point. And
you
they
didn't
talk
see them
to
before?
Yeah, I did not see them before.
Oh,
they
I
were
didn't know
just like that. They were just fucked up, and I was like, what is this room? There's nothing in this room. It's just these things that I can't interact with, and they don't give me like any gameplay reward. There's nothing in this room that gives me like a collectible or something that I would think that there would be. But then I found the next time they were alive and they talk about the cult or whatever that Ross explained to me. And like, that was really cool. Like, that was another layer on that place. Like, it just validated me replaying the game.
Yeah. Yeah, because the first time you meet them, they're all alive, but they're kind of this, like, Radiance cult. They're kind of, like, worshipping the Radiance. And then as it slips out of the black egg, they become, like, overly infected, and they all just die and get these horrible orange, pustules on them and stuff, like everything that the Radiance touches. And the reason I explain all this is because the Hollow Knight is there to contain the Radiance. And the reason, like, mid-fight, he's stabbing himself and shit, and all these orange pustules are flying out that deal damage to you, is the Radiance is inside him, and he's trying to kill it. He feels it trying to burst out of him, and he's trying to fight you, because he knows, like, if you kill him, the Radiance is going to get out. He's trying to protect it, but at the same time, the Radiance is literally bursting out of him. He's just trying to fucking kill this monster inside of himself, So this fight is amazing when you go through it, because you're like, what the fuck is going on? And sometimes he's just fully possessed by the Radiance. He's this horrible mass of orange pustules. He's like flying around, his body's slamming on the ground and exploding out around you. And sometimes just fighting you with a nail, like an actual bug that has possession of themselves. And if you don't do the true ending where you go kill the Radiance, all you do is take his place. You kill the Hollow Knight and you become the Hollow Knight and take his place and contain the Radiance.
You get chained up all sweet like again?
Yeah, you get chained up like that. But that's why, like, that's a bad ending. You eventually get the true ending by going into his dream and killing the Radiance itself. At which point, like, the Radiance is completely destroyed by the Void, which is what you're made of. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But the Hollow Knight fight is so interesting in so many ways because, like, one, it's really mechanically diverse. He has a lot of attacks, and they're all interesting, but they're all fair and completely dodgeable. Like, it's completely reasonable to go in there and take no damage. If you know the fight, it's completely reasonable to take no damage against Hollow Knight. But he's still fun, and his attacks are so diverse, and they come out fast, and they hit pretty hard. It's fun to fight him. It's not like a given that you win that fight. And then you go into the Radiance, and that's also a super fun.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite fight.
Yeah, it's one of the.
Grim's my favorite fight. He's a DLC fight, but he's my favorite non-DLC fight.
Yeah, but I think Radiance is one of the best designed fights in the game because it is hard, but it is completely learnable to the point where, like, you probably fight Radiance. By the time you actually beat Radiance, you're probably taking, like, no damage off of them, and that's a lot of fun. But then there's the other DLC, like the Godmaster DLC, where later at the end of Pantheon 5, after 40 something bosses, you fight Pure Vessel, which is an upgraded Hollow Knight, and Absolute Radiance, which is an upgraded Radiance, and you just have to beat them. And that's not great, I think. Those are super fun fights, but they're incredibly hard just to get to, much less beat, right? And that turns off so many players from ever completing that DLC and getting, like, the alternate endings that exist in that DLC.
Yeah.
Like, I would say probably 90% of players have never beaten Godmaster.
That's one, more than 90%.
At least, yeah.
Like, it could be 90. Like,
it could be 99. Yeah,
it could be 99%. What I would say, I'm almost likely 99%. Because I feel like I fall in the 1% most of the time. Fucking platinumed
Spyro the Dragon.
Death Stranding.
Jam and Earl 2.
Death Stranding.
Sorry, just naming games you might have been playing.
Lightning round.
The Lion King for NES.
Okay, I'm 5% on that one. But
I beat it.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have, but I played it on the PC. Back when it was new to have a PC in your home.
Game's hard shit.
I know. It took two of us.
It took two. And I really don't like locking stuff behind incredible difficulty in Metroidvanias. One of the best, like, I think Metroidvanias should be about is getting and doing everything. Like, all Metroidvania, not all Metroidvanias, but most Metroidvanias, a big part of them is completion percentage. And it feels good to get, like, everyone in Symphony of the Night, Castlevania, does the 206%. It's a big thing a lot of people do. 100%ing Super Metroid, it's like a big deal. It's just too damn hard to 112% this game because of Pantheon.
Yes.
That I don't like it. I think Pantheon should just exist as a side challenge you can do. It shouldn't be part of the percentage. It should just be like, it's fun to fight a bunch of bosses. Here's a place you can fight a bunch of bosses. That's all it should be to me.
Yeah, that opens an interesting discussion.
It's like a minor complaint, but it's there.
That opens an interesting discussion, I think, about what it means to, like, experience content, right? Because Team Cherry has been open in saying, when they developed this game, they did not expect everyone to experience all the content. That's not their goal. Like, if you don't find Abyss Shriek, they don't care. Very little is technically required to beat the game, and it's very likely you miss a lot if you play blind. Because they were like, we just want.
You might not find the Abyss.
Yes, they said outright that we just want players to literally get lost in exploration, you know, and then beat the game on their own time. But like, the Hive is literally hidden. You know, you might not find the Hive, right?
Yeah.
You might not find the Abyss. You almost certainly won't find like Birthplace or something like that, or like White Palace, unless you've looked up a guide and you know about true endings. Stuff like that is hidden. And Team Cherry doesn't care if you experience it. Yet there is percentages in the game. So, like, if you know that 112 exists, but you also know you have to, like, get through Pantheon 5, how much of a drive does that create in the player? And how much disappointment will that create if the player can't complete Pantheon 5? Because that's a fucking lot to ask of somebody. To do a full game boss rush. And it's not just all the bosses you fought. There are bosses you have not fought in that boss rush. And then it ends with 2 of the hardest bosses in the game.
Yeah.
You know? That's a wild ask. And to be fair, the endings that it unlocks...
And not necessarily a fun ask. Like, you can have fun doing parts of Pantheon, obviously, but it's just like, that's just grinding. Like, you're just grinding.
Yes.
And, like, the game doesn't have grinding. Like, you know?
And to be fair, the endings that it unlocks are just, like, are Godmaster endings. They're technically canon because all endings are canon, according to Team
Whatever
Cherry.
that means.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, really. But the
you know what it means? It means stop asking us.
It means we didn't fucking plan it. We don't know. There's a reason we call the Radiance the true ending, because it's the most satisfying to the story that has been established through the game. So we call it true ending. We'll consider the canon ending. That's it. But the Godmaster endings are specific to Godmaster. We see stuff happening to the Godmasters when you get those endings. It doesn't really mean a lot compared to the normal endings of the game. But the fact is, it is content. There's even actually an area after that, if you beat Pantheon 5, called the Land of Storms, that you and I have never seen because neither one of us has beat P5.
Yeah, I hadn't even heard of that place.
Exactly. It's not much. It's just one room, I think. I've seen a little bit of it in YouTube videos, but I've never been there because I haven't beaten P5. Because it's a wild ask. I might beat P5 one day, but not soon. My question is, like, how much... when you do things like put percentages in the game, how much does that like incentivize players? You know, how much? What does it
mean? A lot for me personally.
What does it mean to say for the developers to say that like we don't expect everybody to experience all the content versus what most actual players are going to do, which is seek out every fucking piece of content.
I'm not even kidding. Like, I usually nowadays when I play Final Fantasy don't get ultimate weapons that are kind of in every game, like some crazy hard ass to get an ultimate weapon to get like the coolest thing in the game. But if the game straight up put a percentage on the game, I might start doing it. Like, that's literally what it takes for me.
That's interesting. Yeah. I hate the idea of, like, ultimate weapons in general, because usually they're just, like, something you get at the end of the game that you barely get to use. You know?
It's okay. They put stupid bonus boss fights in all the fucking Final Fantasies.
Yeah, there's that, right?
Some of them are cool. So in most Final Fantasies, there's a damage cap at 9999. I think this is 13. It honestly might be 10. The ultimate weapons allow you to go past the damage cap, and that's it.
I think that is 10.
It is 10? I think that's really cool, like, personally.
Yes.
It feels extra powerful. But, like, also in 10 to get all the ultimate weapons, one of them is dodge 200 lightning bolts in a row. Yeah. Like, there's a flash, you have to hit X at the right time. 200 times in a row, and that is an unreasonable thing. Like, that's the only reason. I would have done the ultimate weapons, but that exists.
Yeah, and it also obviously depends on like games, you know, what's considered an unreasonable ask. Because like I said, Hollow Knight was all about the experience as challenge through combat.
Yeah.
When you see like the last DLC is Godmaster and it's all about just boss rushes, it's not expected that you get through them. But it does suck that they put 2 really unique and interesting bosses at the very end of the hardest possible challenge. To the point where like, I would love to experience those bosses. It's too hard to get there. You know, I'll get there one day probably.
Yeah. So an example of kind of like a thing the game asks you to do in kind of a normal completion run. The hardest little side quest in the game, in my opinion, is This person says, deliver this flower to a grave.
Oh, man.
You can't fast travel or break, and if you get hit once, it breaks. And it's on literally the other side of the fucking map. And you get like a heart piece for it, which doesn't feel commensurate for the work I did. Yeah. But whatever, capitalism. And that almost felt unreasonable when they asked. Like, I did it, and it took me not super long. It took me less than an hour.
Yeah.
And it's a little frustrating, but like I kind of had fun doing it. And it's like, that's the limit. But like, there's definitely a moment in some games to say, if you do this, you can get this. But what this is just obviously insane. And that's how I feel about Godmaster, where it's just like, the second I hear it, I'm like, that doesn't sound fun, and I haven't tried it yet. I just know it's not going to be fun to try to beat that. So, like, I just won't do it. And I just think when you're making a Metroidvania with a completion percentage, you should try not to put anything in that, like, beat 42 bosses in a row.
Yes.
Where it's just like, even if I was really skilled, that's still going to take hours upon hours upon hours. Why would I just not play another game or just replay this fucking game? Like, my other I might have been able to be Godmaster if I spent my whole time on the second file just doing Godmaster, but I don't even think that's true. And I had more fun just replaying the game, I think. So
yeah, I don't think it's really worth doing casually. You know, speedrunners do it, obviously. There's a few people who have beaten all of Pantheon 5 hitless.
Yeah.
Which sounds fucking insane.
And it's cool to, in the game, have, if you're really good, to have something for, like, you're ridiculous. Like, and you have a challenge you can have. Like, you know, ridiculous mode challenge. You know, like Metal Gears do that sometimes. They'll have like a never get sighted mode, and like, I mean, I've done those. I've done several never get alerts. You know, but there's a difference between like never ever get seen or never get seen and then the file ends and you have to restart. Like, there's differences to those challenges that I personally think like it's super weird to lock endings behind that.
Yeah, I agree.
So when I was playing, there's a part right before the final boss where I was kind of just dragging my feet because, like, that happens in a game I like where I'm like, a good example, Breath of the Wild, where they're like, you can fight Ganon now. And I'm like, yeah.
Technically, you fight Ganon from the beginning.
Or I'll just wander. Like, you got everything that you wanted, but you're just like, I kind of don't want to fight Ganon.
Yeah.
And you know what? I haven't fought Ganon yet in Breath of the Wild. I beat the shit out of that game. But I got to that point and I was just like, oh, what shit I can do, Roz? Like, I did everything. He's like, I know something you haven't done. And I'm like, he's like, it's annoying. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And he's like, okay, go down this well, break the sign, go back up. Now descending dark and break the sign again. And he's like, okay, do that until something dies. And just started doing it. I'm like, I've been doing this for a while. And he's like, it looks like it's a 2% chance. You're going to be here for a bit. So we just did that for a while, right? Just descending dark where you do your slam down move. And down the well until eventually I see a thing die. And then he led me across the map into a house that, like, I've seen before but wasn't open. But the moral story of all these little details is there's no way to find this naturally.
No,
right?
Not really.
You probably find an exact accident, if whoever found it. And then in the room, there's a little diary. And it's from the Mending Bug, the guy who fixes signs. And it basically starts out just like, I just love my life. It's just so amazing waking up and fixing signs all the time. Someone keeps breaking a sign, I don't even care. Just keep fixing it and having a grand old time. And I like look at Ross, I'm like, you made me do this. You just made me bring misery in the world, and it was difficult and annoying to do.
Fuck you, it was content.
Yeah. Like, it is content, and it's really funny content. Like, that's honestly a genius joke.
Yeah. It's funny because you could really do it on accident, right? There's always a chance you descending dark down the well, and you just accidentally hit Menderbug. I think it's likely it happened on accident to a lot of people, and it's also likely some people did it intentionally, because if you break the sign and you just go down there normally, you'll see Menderbug fix the sign and then fly away really fast. And you might think, I wonder if I can kill that guy. You start de-darking the well until you do. But it's so funny that it opens his house and he's just like, I met a girl today. I might just muster up the courage to go talk to her. My life's great, but it could only be better shared with another.
Yeah.
like The only way to get there is if you murdered that bug. It's the funniest joke in the game, and I love it to death.
Another kind of equally little dark Easter egg is when you collect all the grubs, there's like the room where they're all like, "Brr, brr, brr," and it's just cute and adorable. And the big old grub is the guy who gives you the shit for like rescuing his children.
They're all dancing, you know?
And I go, I got all the grubs. I'm really excited. Ross is like, oh, did you ever go back? And I was like, well, I got all the rewards. I got the last grub. And he's like, you should go back there. There's like a story beat. And like, the granddad bug just ate all the other bugs. And he's just big and fat and you can jump on his tummy. And it's like, they were so cute. Like, that was the main reason I like grubs, is like, they're cute. And if you get all of them, they just die. But like, it's fun to get all of them because one, it's fun to get all of them. And the final reward for getting all of them is if you have full hearts, there's a charm that gives you like a projectile on your sword. Like you're in the original Zelda. And like, that's fun to use.
Yep.
And so like, I kind of want to get it every time I do like kind of a real file, but like, it just requires them all to die. And I don't like that.
It's unclear if they're dead because you can hear them inside the Grubfather.
Almost worse.
Yeah, it might be worse, but it could be like some cocoon phase where they're gonna explode out of them, like they explode out of Grub's mother, the big fly boss. She's an early game boss.
Yeah, it's like, it's also just like, it just begs the question, like, what other weird hidden dark stuff is like, oh, you beat the game only using your nail? The end of the game is now the human centipede. And you're like, what? Why would you choose that? Centipede bugs. It's related.
There's no humans in this game. Yeah, Grubfather is it's a divisive choice for Team Cherry to be made. The last one actually is Mila, Mila's just this little miner who sings like a pretty kind of dark song, like a little children's rhyme while she's sitting there mining just outside Crystal Peaks. And then as the infection starts to spread as you progress the game, she kind of gets worse, but you can literally talk to her, and she's like, oh, I'm just pretty happy mining, you know. And then once you generate the infected crossroads, she becomes fully infected, and she just fights you, and she's the only bug that screams when she dies. So
I didn't know that. Yeah.
In randomizers, it's so funny when they do enemy randomizers because she looks like normal like mining bugs, right? But every once in a while, you'll be going through, and you'll kill a mining bug, and this one just screams, and you're like, oh, that was a Mila.
Yeah.
It's super sad because you can't do anything about Mila. But then there's like Cloth, who shows up to help you fight the Traitor Lord, who's like a big mantis. And if you go all the way through her ending, she'll show up to help you fight the Traitor Lord, and then the Traitor Lord kills her. Like, they kill each other. They die in each other's swords, like, quite literally. But if you don't talk to her, and you don't have her die in the Traitor Lord fight, she just ends up in Dirtmouth with you. She just lives. That's fine. Same with the Nail Master. If you can kill the Nail Master after you get the last nail upgrade, but if you don't kill him,
no. See, I think you should slow down because the reason is really cool. Because there's a Nail Master. He makes your nail better, makes it 4 damage better each time, and you have to get more and more ore. And like the final upgrade is like 4,000 money, which is like the most expensive thing in the game, I think. And when you finish the final upgrade, he just says he needs to step outside, and you walk outside, and he's looking over the little cliff where his house is, and he goes, I've like accomplished like the meaning of my life, right? Like everything like led up to making like the best nail ever, and it's done, and I have no purpose anymore. He goes, I want to go by feeling exactly how exquisite the blade is.
Yeah.
Strike me down with the nail that I made so I can die experiencing like the fruits of my labor. And you can kill him or you can't kill him. And like, that's really good to me. That's better than a game saying your choices will affect things and in having like different narrative branching paths. That makes the choice like deep inside the player that I really enjoyed. I killed him in a second. Like, not even trying to be heartless, just being like, that was his wish. Like, I should respect that. And I think that's really cool. Like, there's not a lot of moments in games that will make you pause quite like that scene will.
I want to talk about that moment because I find it really interesting.
Yeah, I just did, but okay.
I've got more to say, and it's more in depth because I know stuff. So there's 3 choices you could make there. You can kill him with your nail. You can kill him with a spell if you're a bastard.
Yeah, it's the evilest by far.
Yes, by far. Or you can not kill him, right? So he says, yes, my purpose is complete. I just want to feel the sting of the nail that I made, you know? And that seems like a very samurai way to go. You know what I mean? Like, I have one purpose in life and it's complete. I just want to, die in battle. I just want to die by the nail I created. I hate that shit. I think that, like, self-deterministic, I have one purpose in life and it's been fulfilled and I don't have any use anymore is such bullshit. And the game sort of agrees, because when you kill him, his body just ends up in the junk pit. Like, you can just find him floating face down in the water, and it's a lot less ceremonial than when you kill him and he just, falls off a cliff. Because you don't know where he goes. You just kill him, he falls off the cliff, and it's like, oh, that's done. But no, he just ended up in the fucking trash, right? Because that's what happens.
Oh, you don't get it. Continue.
And then, if you don't kill him, and you get the nail arts from the other masters, at least one of them, I forget who, I think it's Oro. It might not be Oro. It's the one that paints. It's the guy that paints. You find him and the nailsmith sitting in the same room, just like painting together. Everybody was running a speed run to get that scene called Happy Couple. It's the Happy Couple %. Yeah. They were doing it all for Pride Month. It was a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah, everybody was just running Happy Couple %, which I thought was really cool. But if you don't kill the nail master, he finds a friend. Or the nailsmith. He finds a friend in the nail masters, and he finds a new purpose in life. He finds a way to go on. And I think that's a much better message than, like, my purpose is done, it is time to die. I think that's such an old way of looking at
Yeah, but I think it just fits in, like, the bleakness of the world.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Like, there's a lot of doing things in vain for the NPCs in the game.
Yeah.
Like their whole purpose is a lot of times never truly fulfilled, And, like, a lot of the NPCs just die or kind of wander around pointlessly at the end, And it just begs a lot of questions,
Yeah. But there's, like, Coral, who his journey around Hallownest comes to an end, and you just find his nail, like, stuck in the ground next to Blue Lake. And it's questionable what happened to him. Like, some people are like, oh, did Coral just die? Did he, like, go off to die without his nail? Because a nail you need that to survive in the world, But I like to think, Coral just went off on a different adventure.
I don't know, does he have spells?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I guess you can't get spells without a nail. Can't get mana.
And the same thing is true of, like, the Hollow Knight versus the true ending. You could just kill the Hollow Knight and take his place exactly as intended, or you can do true ending, where you go in and cut out the heart, cut out the true rot of the world. You know? I think in this way, the game has a message of hope that isn't readily apparent in the bleak atmosphere of it. I think there is something to be said for, even in this ruined kingdom, there's something worth fighting for. There's something worth living for. You know? And you get that. You just get that message a lot. I think you can get it pretty easily from the nailsmith. So I don't kill the nailsmith anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever will not kill him, but
that's fair too. You know what I mean?
It just feels right. One thing I like is, so in the Stagway system, that is your fast travel system, there's a place called Queen Station and King Station, and they look like it looks like a hub, right?
Yeah, they're like multi-leveled and everything.
And they just use them all the fucking time. Like, they're the two Stagway stations, I think, that lead to the most places, and, like, they're built in as a hub, like, in the appearance, and they feel like a hub. And most of the Stagway stations are just, like, really smartly located. And they're not collectibles, but they feel like collectibles in a certain way. Where whenever you get to a new area, one of the first two things you're trying to find is the Stag Station and the map person.
Yeah.
And both of them have signs that point to them. One has literal signs that point to the Stag Station. And the other, you can hear him humming, the map guy.
And you can follow paper trails.
Follow paper trails. For example, there's one that's kind of hidden in a secret wall, but a paper trail is kind of like through the wall, so you know it's hidden in Kingdom's Edge. And it's just small and simple and cool. And it just, as you're going through the area, even if you're not finding little collectibles and grubs along the way, you're always making progress. You're always working on the part of the game that makes you feel good. That's actually one of the problems. It's actually really difficult to stop playing for the night, because you're always like, oh, now I can go here. Now I can do this. Or I should just do this real quick. And you always have a mental list in your head of what you're trying to do. At least me personally. That it makes it difficult because you know what's next. Whereas a lot of games, you'll like beat like a boss or beat an area and you're like, I'm sure someone in town will tell me what to do next, but I don't know. I'm just going to turn it off for the night. You know, if that makes sense. And it's very organically always feeling like you're in the process of progress.
Yeah. And I love this system of the map maker and the stag stations, because it requires that you go into the unknown. You have to go into these areas that you've not been in and you don't know where you're going. And you have to find these fast travel points. You have to find the map maker, right? And until you do those things, you don't know where you're going or what's ahead of you. So you literally have to venture into the unknown to find these things. And then they sort of become known through that. You gain this intimate understanding of the areas in ways that other, like AAA titles that just have like generic fast travel systems, like, oh, I've been to this cave, I can fast travel to this cave. I'm talking specifically about Skyrim, but shit like that just ruins any ability to actually explore. It's like, sure, you have to go there, but it's not hard. There's like so many fast travel points all over the map that it doesn't matter if you have to go somewhere. There's a fast travel point within 5 feet of everywhere. Whereas this is like, okay, I want to go to Fungal Wastes. I might go to Queen Station and like make my way down from there, or I might go to King Station and make my way through City and go into Fungal from the other side of City, But there's not like a specific stag station for Fungal Base, It makes you explore, it makes you think about it, and then even the mapping system is you don't map a room unless you go to it. You have to buy the quill, you have to buy the map, and then you have to physically go to the rooms. And all it does is sort of show you their shape. It doesn't tell you what's in them or anything. So you still have to know your way around.
Yeah. I also think the money system is actually pretty nice because for most of the game, there's stuff to buy. And a lot of it, there's a lot of stuff that's just like, 300 something, 400, the money. But when you die, Geo, if you die and you don't get your soul, you lose all your money. So sometimes in the middle of a run, you're like, let me just go back to Dirtmouth, the main town, and go buy some shit real quick, or whatever, or go to Salubra and do the charm stuff. And all the money stuff is like pretty useful. Even if like a charm you don't use, getting charms unlocks charm notches from Salubra for later on. It's like, it always feels like you're spending your money wisely.
Yeah.
And on my replay where I like to buy everything, because this is what I like to do, I basically, right when I got to the part of the game where I was being the boss after I did like most of the content in the game, but not like 100% it, I stopped needing money, but I had just finished buying everything in the game. And like, that seems pretty balanced to me.
Yeah, I think money in the game's pretty balanced overall. It can be hard to get if you want to grind it, but it's always like pretty readily available. It's rare if you need to grind it.
And it's also fun to decide like what I want to spend this money on.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to buy my simple key now? Do I want to buy the Lumifying Lantern now? Like, just, there's little things in the game where it's, you can sequence your money spending differently, and it's fun.
So, there's an area in the game that a lot of players won't get to see unless they like look up true ending stuff, called White Palace, which is where you go into the dream of like what the palace of the place used to look like, but everything, there's no enemies in there. There's just like only attendants that bow to you. And all the furniture is like covered in sheets, like somebody just moved out or something. And the place is just a platforming challenge made of like tons of buzzsaws and spikes and prickly vines and stuff everywhere. And it's just there to challenge like every aspect of movement that you have. To me, it's a fucking playground. It's so fun when I see a room full of buzzsaws, because I'm like, I can pogo all over that. That's going to be fun. Joey, you had a lot of problems in White Palace.
I don't have that many problems in it. I just raged during it because there's a bunch of rooms designed to piss you off.
Sounds like you didn't have any problems in White Palace.
No. Like, I think it took me a little over an hour.
Yeah,
right?
No, I'm not saying you did like uncommonly bad or anything.
Yeah, no, like that's like, it was challenging enough where it was hard not to like bitch about certain rooms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a couple of rooms that are just like, you don't make me do this. Like, I know what to do, but it's, like, annoying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I had is every time you get hit, like, you lose a heart, and if you go through a bunch of rooms and you die, you have to start a whole section over, right? Which you don't want to do. But there's an easy fix. There's a charm that slowly heals you, your last heart you lost, right?
Yeah, Hive Blood.
But it takes a while to do it. So the obvious answer is to put on Hive Blood, and then every time you die, don't touch your controller for 20 seconds. And maybe just like save all the time instead, because like fuck that.
Yeah,
it's just like not great, and it's like you don't have to do that. You can just like do things good or whatever. But like I'm pretty good at platforming. I did the area pretty quickly, all things considered, and about 25% of it was sitting around.
Yeah,
right.
From my understanding of watching people online, that is a lot of people's experience with White Palace is exactly Hive Blood and just waiting for your health to come back, because there's not enough checkpoints and there's not enough like healing statues.
And the first time you do it, most of the things that kill you, you didn't know were there, right? Like you jump and then you're like, oh, there's a saw above my head that I couldn't possibly fucking see.
Yeah.
And so that's fine, but it turns into, well, I need to hive blood when I'm doing this blind for the first time. And even I probably hive blood, if I beat White Palace like 5-6 times in my life, I probably am going to use Hive Palace in like all of those. It's probably like the 7th, 8th, or 9th time where I feel comfortable, where it's like, if I die, I have to restart over, whatever. Once you figure out what to do with each room, it's fun to do that, and it's not that bad, but it's a thing designed to make you rage, like in a lot of ways.
It really is. And a lot of White Palace, I like the platforming elements, I love pogoing buzzsaws and stuff, that's fine. But then there are other rooms that are just like tunnels of spears that come out of the wall, and the only thing you can do is like dash between them really precisely with your timing, and there's not a lot you can do to like mitigate how long that takes or how difficult or how precise that's gonna be. So it doesn't feel like a movement or platforming challenge. It's just like, can you get through this hallway? Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, that sucks. Right? Like, that's not fun at all.
The other thing, too, is, like, I think Ross just played this game a lot and is just way more comfortable, like, pogoing around the environment. Because he was like, oh, you can pogo saws. He's like, in fact, it's required. And he was incorrect.
Yeah, apparently it's not.
I did not pogo a single saw. And there's a couple things, there's these bugs you need to pogo. But other than that, pogoing is completely optional, except for these clear pogo bugs. And I also felt like they weren't trying to get you to pogo. Like, there was a right answer I could see with my eyes.
Yeah.
On, like, if you do this and this, that's how you do it. But there's obviously some pogoing that kind of allows you to skip little sections, but it's just hard to eyeball that your first time through. And there's just some weird hitbox shit. Like you can like be inside a saw a little bit and it doesn't hit you. And as a first time going through the area, you're kind of like, certain things you need to avoid more than you don't need to avoid. And it's just like, it's something that just feels better if you've done the area a lot and you understand all, but it's a completely unique set of challenges that the game is putting in that. It just makes it difficult as a blind person, but I still think it's fun. Like, I like platforming stuff, but I also think there's like a lot of people I know who might play Hollow Knight, and it's just like, you will not enjoy the true ending because you have to White Palace.
Yeah. Because,
for example, there's a grub room, or a math shard, I think it's a math shard, where you have to like pogo on centipedes that are moving across the bottom, and then jump on walls and then jump around spikes. And it's just brutal to do, like, the first time you do it. I did it on the second playthrough and did, like, the first try, so it's not, like, once you learn it, it's not that bad.
I still have problems with that room.
But there's, like, I've heard other people who played this game, not just Ross, who were like, fuck that goddamn fucking shit, And I've heard other people who are just, genuinely just find the pogoing hard. And that makes sense, because it's like, it requires a lot of button inputs, and knowing your timing and stuff. Knowing the length of your thwart exactly. Like, a bunch of little things that you might not be good if you're not, like, inherently good at video games or have played a lot of this genre or whatever. So I would just say it does kind of lock the true ending from some players, because one of the things that's really good about Hollow Knight is it actually pulls in a lot of non-gamers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who just like, it might be the hardest game they've ever played. Like, that's one thing. So a lot of times when I play a game, I like to look up stuff online. A lot of people were saying this is the hardest game they've ever played. I personally wouldn't even put it on my top, like, 50 hardest games I've ever played.
What about 50?
Yeah, I just didn't think it was that hard.
You play a lot of NES games.
But I played a lot of NES games. And I get that not everyone did that. Like, it's not harder than Super Star Wars. It's not harder than Lion King. It's not harder than a lot of dumb bullshit games, in my opinion. But for a good portion of the audience, yeah, I think it's in their top 5 hardest games, or if not their hardest game there.
I mean, there's a question of like, what does it mean to be a hard game? Like Super Star Wars is a like semi-unplayable game, right? And that's where its difficulty comes from. Is it's just stupid. But then there's games that are challenging, like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls and stuff.
Ninja Gaiden,
right?
Yeah,
Ninja Gaiden's a little mix of both on that one.
I think it's completely fair and playable until the final boss.
Yeah, but then like, of games that I consider hard, I think of like Sekiro as maybe one of the hardest games I've ever played.
Sekiro is the hardest game I've ever played.
It might legitimately be the hardest game I've ever played.
It's not the hardest game I've ever beat, because I have not beat it.
Yeah, there's that, right? I beat Sekiro, but like, I don't know if I could legitimately beat Ninja Gaiden without like save states and stuff, because I just can't imagine. I've tried. It just seems really incredibly obtuse to do that. But Sekiro is like the hardest game I've beaten, probably. But I've played dumber games. I've played Super Star Wars. That game sucks, just because it is hard to play in general.
So thanks for listening. So you might have noticed that last 2 games we did were Metroid Prime and Hollow Knight, which were 2 similar genre Metroidvanias that we're going to do something different next month. Also, we had a 3rd review for Super Metroid if you listen to both of those casts together. I just somehow in the middle of it reviewed Super Metroid. So a lot of times we like to do games that kind of the last game made us think about, and that's kind of a fun way to, the last cast kind of flows in the next cast. But we decided to do something seasonal this time. So next month is October for all of you listening.
So we're going to do something Oktoberfest themed.
Yes, so we're going to play a German drinking game.
Yes.
You derailed me, so it's your turn to take over.
I really wanted to have a German drinking game off the top of my head, but I don't.
Yeah. Also, I said earlier that usually we play a game that one of us played and the other of us haven't played. And we can look at through that lens. We're going to play a game or games that neither of us have played yet. A series that I don't think either of us have played yet.
Yeah, not at all.
So, we want to do Resident Evil.
Yeah, we're going to be completely original and do Resident Evil in October. I don't think anybody's ever done that before.
Just fuck off. We're just trying to be fun and festive. Got shit all over our ideas that we came up together with.
No, we're really excited about a couple of Resident Evil games. Specifically Resident Evils 2 and 4.
We literally don't know what to expect. We both know a lot about the series based on being a game alive as a person who plays games.
Yeah, and I've done a ton of research. Like, I know what to expect from 4, not a lot of 2. But it's going to be an interesting time. So I think we're going to play both of them.
And also just try to kind of look at the series, like the first impression of not just the games, but as a series. Just trying to think about what Resident Evil's place is in the gaming universe. Because you might have noticed the new game has a lot of hype around it.
Yeah, Resident Evil 8 came out kind of recently.
Mostly because of Weird Vampire Lady, but whatever.
Hey, I mean, Yeah, I'm really interested for Resident Evil talking about the transition between, like, the early Resident Evil to the everything Resident Evil 4 and beyond, which is more of like an action RPG kind of thing, where it's less about inventory management and more about blowing away everything in front of you, which kind of set the stage for like a lot of modern games like Gears of War and Halo and stuff. So
don't just start the review now. Just straight up how the other one's gonna start. Like previously on Boss Door Podcast. Ross just said this. We're starting the cast with that.
Anyway, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, hit us up on Twitter at bossdoor4. That's bossdoor in the letter 4. We have an email, bossdoorpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a YouTube channel, but if you're listening to this, you probably don't need to listen to our YouTube channel. I hope to be posting some videos on there that are not strictly our podcast soon. So we'll find out. Anyway, thanks for listening. And this has been Joey.
Smell you later.